Hey there everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd, and as a result of being a retro video game nerd for quite some time with a massive collection of 23 plus consoles and nearly 500 video games, I've become somewhat of an opinionated man. I thought it might be a fun idea to share some of those opinions with you. Now keep in mind that these are just opinions, and sometimes you'll agree with me, other times you won't. This is going to be a discussion video, and I'm prepared to discuss many different topics with you guys in the comments section below, and I'm also very well prepared to have my feelings hurt. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started because I have 30 separate opinions in no particular order, and most of these are going to be kind of controversial. Number one, the Zelda games are just too tedious and boring. Yeah, right off the bat, we're getting into something controversial, but all of these opinions are actually true. This is how I really think. I just never liked the Zelda games. I never could get into the Zelda games as much as some other people have, and I've played several of them. I've played Link to the Past, I've played Ocarina of Time, and I've played the Wind Waker, as well as Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, all the way up to Breath of the Wild, and they are fun games, I will admit that. But they're just not for me. They're not my style. They're too tedious. And they're kind of the same formula over and over and over again. You have this large goal at the end of the day to save Zelda and probably the entire world. But first you got to start out doing some really mindless, tedious tasks, like getting your first weapon and doing all this stuff. And then you got to go do these little things. And it's all a big build-up to eventually become the hero. And I've just grown tired of that entire process. I realize that that's probably most games that I'm talking about right now, but Zelda in particular, it never was for me, and that's okay. Number two, I actually enjoy the extensive console modding process, which is kind of unpopular because, at least on my YouTube channel, I see a lot of people say that they don't like EverDrives and optical drive emulators because they don't want to open up their console and they don't want to have to deal with all that stuff, and it's just too much. And then you have the other people that say that they're not really into necessarily changing their console. They feel as though it's inauthentic to change anything about the console. And then you have the people that are just straight up uneducated, and they say that if you put a GDMU in your Sega Dreamcast, then you've turned it into an emulation box instead of a Sega Dreamcast, which is just simply not true. I've always enjoyed this process, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just a tinkerer or super OCD or whatever, but I've always enjoyed taking a console apart or a controller apart in an attempt to fix it. I never said I was really good at that, because I'm not. I'm most certainly not adept at soldering and console modding, but stuff like the GDMU is very, very easy, and novice things like changing the capacitors on a power supply is a lot easier than you might think, and I've really enjoyed learning a new skill despite not having enough practice to be decent at it and not having the steady hands to be decent at it either. But a lot of people don't like that thing. They would rather either not do it at all or pay somebody else to do it, but I've always been interested in trying to learn how to do that sort of thing myself, not to mention getting all my consoles RGB SCART ready and hooking those up to a modern display. That's always been a really super fun thing for me, and after 10 years of starting this process, I can say that all my consoles are hooked up with the best quality cables and video signals that they possibly could be. Number three, Mario Party is a game of chance with little skill, and it's a waste of time. A lot of people are going to hate me for this one, but Mario Party is not a fun game to me. It has never been fun because I don't feel like I'm in total control of me winning or losing, which is a big deal for me if I'm playing a competitive video game with my friends. I'm a competitive person. I used to compete in tennis tournaments back when I was a kid, and I took second place one year in singles, and I got first place in doubles. I competed in the International Fingerstyle Guitar Competition, and I got fourth place, and then went back in subsequent years to get the second place, and then eventually first place. So I'm a highly competitive person, and it's not that I want to be the best or anything. I just want to do my best and hope for the best results. With Mario Party, it just feels like a game of chance, and most of that gameplay is. I mean, you've got the mini games that require skill and everything, but just by rolling the dice, you never know what you're going to get. And as a result, I just can't get into it. I can't have fun with the Mario Party game, even with a bunch of friends that are playing together, because you think you have a plan laid out, but like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And I feel like I'm just constantly getting punched in the face for no fault of my own in a Mario Party game. So as a result, Mario Party games just aren't for me. Number 4, Nintendo 64 first-person shooters are borderline just absolutely unplayable now. I think most of us can agree with that just because it's going against 20 plus years of muscle memory with a modern controller with 2 analog sticks. The N64 first-person shooters back in the day were amazing. GoldenEye is a great example. And I've had people come over to my house in recent years and get really excited about playing GoldenEye, 4-player GoldenEye on the N64 together, just like we used to do back in the day. And on paper, it's fun because the memories that you have of doing that are really fun. But in reality, once you sit down with that controller, whether it be the old school N64 controller or a modern wireless controller, it's very difficult to go back to, and it's impossible to be accurate with a game like that going against that muscle memory. It's a fun memory, but you will never see me actively seek out other people to play GoldenEye with. It's just not as fun as it used to be. Number 5, season passes and battle passes have absolutely ruined the multiplayer online experience. And I think most of you guys will probably agree with me on that, but maybe you won't. What I'm getting at is that these days, it's not enough to purchase the game and even purchase a subscription fee to play online like you would on the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5 and even the Xbox. They want you to be a part of what's called a season pass or a battle pass if you're into first-person shooters. Basically, what all that means is that you have extra stuff that you can either pay for outright, or you have to grind and grind and grind, and eventually maybe you'll get something. That sort of thing has never been fun for me, and I really miss the old golden days of just great games where they reward you for playing it long term, for no incentive for other money. You know, they just made a great game, and if you play it, you really like it, you get more rewards based on somebody that won't play it as much as you. I miss that style of video game design, and today it's just incredibly lazy. They'll put out a game that's not finished and disguise it with all these little toys you can get, like cosmetics on your guns and your characters and stuff like that, that really has nothing to do with the core gameplay. It's just extra cosmetic stuff, which cosmetic stuff is fine. I'm all about that, but I hate that battle pass, season pass mentality of it, and so many great games have been sucked away from good gameplay in favor of those season passes and battle passes, and I just don't care. I just do not care about that stuff. Number 8, memory cards never should have left, and they're gone now. There are no memory cards. You can't even use a USB stick as a memory card to transfer saves between PlayStation consoles anymore. I mean, there is a way around it, but you have to have both PlayStation consoles hooked up to the internet, and both of them have to have an online subscription fee and be connected to the cloud, or you have to have them both at the same time. It's just more ridiculous than it actually needs to be. And, you know, admittedly, saves are more convenient now than ever because you just save straight to the hard drive. You don't have to worry about corrupted saves as much. But, you know, I miss being able to have a physical item to transfer between my friends, aka a memory card, to transfer saves and stuff. You know, if I'm going to go hang out with my buddy who's like 2 hours away from me or something, I want to be able to not only bring the game, like a fighting game is a great example of this, but if I unlocked all the characters, I want us to have access to all that. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to do that, but transferring saves these days is a lot more difficult than it needs to be, and I think integration with a USB memory card would be a really smart idea, but then again, why would they do that when they could just force you to do things through the cloud and pay subscription fees? Number 9, I would much rather play Castlevania 64 than Super Mario 64. I am fully prepared to be slayed alive for this opinion, but it's true, man. And a lot of it's nostalgia. Of course, I played Super Mario 64 when it was still relevant, but then again, one of my hardcore memories of the N64 is playing through Castlevania. That aesthetic was just so much more appealing to me, and I realized that Super Mario 64 is one of the best games ever made, and I will not dispute that, but it's just not for me. I didn't like the cutesy, you know, Mario character as much as a lot of other people did. I was much more into the hardcore, you know, scary Castlevania aesthetic. Even though this game did not have your signature Belmont characters per se, it was still a fun game. And a lot of people love to dog on Castlevania 64 because of the camera, but what they're not realizing is that it's really not that much different compared to the Super Mario 64 camera. The N64 just did not have a good camera system back then because we only had one analog stick, and using the C buttons for the camera controls just was the best that they could do at the time. But if you've never played Castlevania on the Nintendo 64, you're missing out on a great experience. Don't listen to all the haters. It's kind of like Nickelback. Nickelback is not necessarily a terrible band. They're not my favorite, but everybody likes to pick on them because for whatever reason. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not my favorite to be sure, but Castlevania 64 is a great game. You just have to push back the haters and try it yourself. Number 10, flash cards and optical drive emulators are a must-have if you want to really get into retro video gaming these days. A lot of people are going to push back on this and say that original hardware with legit copies of games are the way to go, but it's so expensive, man. It's so expensive, and what you have to understand and realize is my mindset is like this. After a company stops supporting a video game console, you're not getting new games, you're not getting new controllers, we're not doing anything, we're not even giving you system updates, then that system belongs to the fan base. If you're not selling things anymore and you're not making money off of it, then the fan base gets to take over. And that's where the flashcards and the ODEs come into play. You can really experience the entire history of a console with these ODEs and flashcards. And I think that is really important. And it doesn't have anything to do with piracy or anything like that. Piracy is weird because they can get you for selling things. But if you're just enjoying it for yourself, then you cross a line. If you just enjoy the games for yourself, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're not breaking the law. And it's not against the law to have an ODE or a flashcard with ROMs and stuff on it. This is my favorite way to enjoy a console's history. You've got the entire library and then some. You've also got new iterations of games that have been tweaked. You've got hacks and stuff like that, as well as new homebrew games that you can enjoy on the original console. And that is so important to me. That's how I choose to enjoy retro video games these days. But a lot of people seem to think otherwise. They think using ODEs and flashcards is the wrong way to go, and that it's like borderline disgusting, which I just flat out do not understand. Number 11, the Wii U had a better console design than the Switch and the Switch 2. This is going to be very controversial, but the Wii U was never really considered to be a success, but it is the precursor to what the Switch has become. The idea is that you have a gamepad, like a handheld game screen, much like the DS and stuff back in the day, but they've upgraded it in the fact that you can also utilize that with your television. You can play games on your television, and occasionally you can get the gamepad and do other stuff with it. What I love about the Wii U, and what I really wish was utilized more, is the dual screen aspect. It's like having a DS, but you've got your television screen as the top portion of the screen and the gamepad as the bottom portion. And I'm really sad that the Nintendo Switch didn't continue with that gameplay design, because there are so many cool games that we could have seen utilizing your TV and the gamepad itself. Granted, the Wii U doesn't have a strong library of really great games, but the ones that did take advantage of that feature are awesome. And I really enjoy being able to take the gamepad and the game off of the screen in a second and just take it and go wherever you want to do, especially if you need to go to the bathroom. Number 12, the Pokemon games have not been great since Generation 3. That's a really controversial one for sure. And I'm sure most of you will agree with me, but some of you won't. I've played and dabbled with Pokemon games since Gen 3, but once it started going hardcore into the 3D stuff, I feel like it lost a ton of charm. There's something special about limiting what you can do in a 2D environment, and I think the Pokemon games really, really had it made there. To be clear, I haven't really enjoyed any Pokemon game after Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and I'm a hardcore Pokemon guy. I was there from the very beginning. I remember playing Red and Blue and then getting Gold and Silver and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. I didn't get so much into the third generation itself, but I did enjoy Fire Red and Leaf Green. I think we're missing something. I think we really should go back to a 2D Pokemon style, and we just haven't seen that from Game Freak, and it's very likely that we never will, because they don't really try hard anymore. There's something that's lacking in the newer Pokemon games that is just, it's not grabbing me. It's not the way that it used to be, and I think they really missed out on a really good formula, and I think that they should at least give it a try to go back and make some 2D games again. Number 13, the Sega Dreamcast and Nintendo GameCube were the last real true video game systems. What I mean by that is, after this generation of the original Xbox and the Sega Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo GameCube, we saw a major shift in video game consoles in the point of they're not just video game consoles anymore. They're media devices. You can play your DVDs on these, and eventually you can start downloading games. And after that, you've got 4K stuff like Blu-rays, and you can get your subscription-based television that way through Hulu and Netflix and HBO and all that stuff. It's all a one-and-done media center. We lost a lot of charm when all that stuff happened, and I think the Nintendo GameCube and the Sega Dreamcast admittedly weren't the most successful consoles in that generation. Obviously, the PS2 blew everybody out of the water, and the Xbox did okay. But look at the differences between the two. The GameCube and the Sega Dreamcast did not have the ability to play other media, and the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox did. So that's probably a huge reason why the PlayStation 2 did so well, because it had a DVD drive. Obviously, the games on the PS2 were great. There's no arguing that. But on the Dreamcast, you still had that identity of just great games. That's all we can offer you on this system. We don't have the ability to play DVDs, but we can give you great games. Same thing with the Nintendo GameCube. There's a lot of really good games on that system, and that's coming from a Sega fanboy. I just don't see it the same way anymore. After that, you can really tell. You can look back in history and see how much things got kind of worse over time. The games just aren't made like they used to be on the Dreamcast and the Nintendo GameCube. Number 14, the Nintendo 64 only has about 15 decent games that are really worth playing today. And that's a big one. I'm fully expecting to get murdered in the comment section for that. There's just a lot of games on the Nintendo 64 that just didn't age very well. That system itself is not the prettiest console, even when upgraded with an RGB video modification. And HDMI mods are admittedly a little better, but there's only so many games on there that still look pretty good, even with a modern display and a RetroTink 4K upscaler, upscaling everything to 4K. And most of those games are just not the caliber of games like Castlevania and Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart and Pilot Wings and stuff like that. There's only a handful of games that are really, really good on that system. One of those is my favorite game of all time that rarely ever gets mentioned by anybody other than me, and that, of course, is Hybrid Heaven. It's a strategy fighting game, and it's amazing. It's one of my favorite games I've ever played, and I never forgot about it, and I still go back and play it every now and again because it's a great experience on the Nintendo 64. Every single brand new first-party Nintendo title up till today is not worth more than $50, and that's a big one. I think a lot of you will agree that Nintendo games are very overpriced. Being on the Switch, most games are jacked up. Even re-releases of games that have been out since like 2019, and even before that are still fetching over $60, which is kind of crazy. And I don't know what it is about Nintendo. Maybe it's because of the game cards, the physical cartridges. Maybe they're a bit more expensive to make, but they hold their value. And I don't like seeing that Nintendo games are always pushing $80 these days. And I guess they kind of always have. But in my opinion, these first-party games that I've played so far, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Tennis Fever, and Mario Kart World, are $50 games. That's what they should have been. But the reason that they're so much more expensive is because Nintendo knows that you're going to pay extra for them because they've got Nintendo characters, and their Nintendo characters are the most valuable thing to Nintendo. It's surely not the hardware. The hardware has been lackluster for a long time now. I don't think we've seen Nintendo be able to compete with everybody else in the current generation since the GameCube days. Number 16, third-party controllers are generally pretty freaking awesome, but you don't like them because you have first-party controller nostalgia. That's a huge one. I've done several reviews on a plethora of different third-party controllers from various manufacturers. We're talking Nixie and 8-Bit Do, Retro Fighters, Retrobit. The list goes on. And some of these controllers are better than others, but generally, these controllers are awesome. You just want them to be exactly like the first-party controllers, which is understandable to an extent. But what you have to understand and realize is that this is amazing. The fact that we are getting brand new controllers for these older systems, wireless iterations of the Sega Genesis pad. You can take a GameCube controller and take the guts out of it and put in a new PCB to make a legit GameCube controller wireless, which is amazing. There's all sorts of different modifications in new controllers. Like for the Sega Dreamcast, we've got a 6-button wireless controller that's based off of the old school ASCII pad, which is amazing. A lot of you complain about these controllers feeling cheap, but in my experience, I've never really had a huge problem with most of these controllers. The main one I can think about is the Retro Fighters Dreamcast controller, the first iteration of that, the wired one. The triggers were awful, and that's terrible. That one was not great. But since then, they've made a lot of improvements on their controllers in general, and I think third-party controllers are one of my favorite parts about retro video gaming these days. Mainline Mario games just bore me to death, and that's all there is to it. I've tried them all. I've tried several iterations of a Mario platforming game, whether it's a 3D platformer or a 2D. I just never got into it. And maybe it's because early on my brain was wired to be like Sonic. You know, I grew up playing Sonic the Hedgehog like most of us did. And there's such a big gap between Sonic and Mario. Sonic is very responsive in his controls, and he goes really fast, and you can just hold the button. But with Mario, his controls were a lot more slippery, and that just never jived with me. And you could say all day, up and down, it's a skill issue, and you're probably right. I've never put in the time to do the Mario games as much as the Sega-type games because they just didn't interest me as much. You have to understand that when I was a kid, Sega was really cool. Sega was like the big kid console, and Nintendo was like the little kiddie stuff. And to some extent, that's still true today. Even though Sega is no longer with us as a console manufacturer, they still make a lot of great games. But that being said, Mario just never did it for me. I've never been a big fan of Mario games, and I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Number 18, I, for one, am getting a little tired of every nerd thing becoming a boring, lifeless CGI movie. And this very well might just be a me thing, but think about everything that has come out in recent years. The Marvel movies, there's been several of them. Marvel movies where you got the superheroes and stuff like that, and then you have most recently Sonic the Hedgehog is finally coming to the big screen, and that's cool, but then you've got Mario coming out with several Mario movies, and who knows when those are going to end. But what I'm getting at is, I don't know if you're like me, but I grew up in the 90s watching films from the 90s with all the action movies and stuff and the explosions and stuff. And then that carried on a little bit into the early 2000s. But once CGI started to take over, I became very aware that it was CGI. And that in itself is a super distracting thing. So whenever I watch a Marvel movie, I'm not seeing Captain America. I'm seeing Chris Evans on a soundstage surrounded by either a green or blue screen with wires, even though you can't see that in the final production of the film. I can't get into it, you know? And I'm not super big into anime or animation, but I feel like that sort of stuff should have stayed there. I don't know. Maybe this is just a me thing. Maybe everybody's going to jump on top of me and say I'm stupid for thinking this, but CGI is just so boring to me. And I'm tired of seeing people try to cash in on nostalgia by taking things that everybody really loves and just milking the hell out of it, turning it into a CGI slop movie, and then expecting everybody to just throw more money into it, which inevitably happens. It's just not for me. I actually like the Sega Saturn a little bit more than the Sony PlayStation. I know that's crazy because the Saturn was a colossal failure here in the States, and the Sony PlayStation was the juggernaut that really took PlayStation as a gaming console brand and shoved it up into the stratosphere. But as far as the games are concerned, on the PlayStation, I really do have fond memories of Final Fantasy VIII and Spyro the Dragon, as well as Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, and Legend of Dragoon. Those are great games that I really, really loved to death as a child. But these days, I prefer to go to the Sega Saturn. And of course, I didn't have one when I was a kid, like most of you, I'm sure. I really do enjoy the Sega Saturn games these days because it's a throwback to 2D games, which these days we're constantly needing some new 2D games. There's so many 3D games out there. But I love the way that the Saturn displays and plays 2D games. Just off the top of my head, Guardian Heroes is a great game. You've also got a lot of great X-Men versus Street Fighter and Street Fighter Alpha series fighting games on there that are great. But Liquid Kids, that's one of my favorite games on that system. I really do love that game. It's so beautiful, and the art direction is amazing. Astral is another example of a great 2D game. I find myself turning on my Sega Saturn a lot more than I do my Sony PlayStation these days. The Switch Joy-Cons are among the worst possible controllers that we could possibly have as a modern controller these days. I get the concept. They're pretty cool. They're taking the Wii Remote and going a different direction with them, but I'm not even talking about the motion controls or anything like that. I'm just talking about being comfortable. I can't see anybody that could possibly say that these controllers, if you can even call them a controller, are comfortable. They dig into your hands, and they want you to turn them sideways and use them as a little baby controller for multiplayer stuff. That is terrible, man. That is a terrible excuse for a controller. I never liked them, and I always try to get a third-party controller if I can, because quite frankly, third-party stuff is a lot better than first-party stuff when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. And if you're going to disagree with me, there's one thing that I have to say that's going to stop you in your tracks. Hall effect and TMR sticks. Nintendo does not include those in their controllers. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the least interesting Sega IPs that we've seen in the last 30 years. Yes, he's an iconic character, and we're so grateful that he's around, because without him, we wouldn't have had a lot of great Sega games, and that's amazing, and I'm glad that he's seeing success with the movies and new games and stuff and everything, but I think there are so many other Sega IPs that don't get enough love, mainly Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. You've got Ristar. Do you remember that? Do you remember playing Ristar? That was a great platformer back in the day on the Sega Genesis. I had so much fun with that game. That game is amazing. The music is orgasmic. The gameplay was a lot of fun. Instead of, spin dashing into people, you're a star. You're a little baby star, and you reach out your hands and grab enemies, and then you body slam them. It's amazing. That's just a small drop in the bucket of amazing Sega IPs. Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio, Shenmue. I could go on and on. There are so many great Sega IPs that often get swept under the rug because Sonic is the favorite child. And I would like to see that change a little bit. No, I don't think Sonic should go anywhere. He's a big part of my life and my childhood, like most of you, I'm sure. But we really need some more Sega characters to come out and do some more games. And I'm hoping that with the recent announcements from Sega in the last couple years, they're going to go back to Shinobi and Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Crazy Taxi, and hopefully Jet Grind Radio as well. First-party controllers actually kind of suck, and they were much better made in the past. The prime example is the PlayStation 5 controller. It feels great in the hands. I enjoy the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers and everything for first-person shooters. That's awesome. But they're made like shit. They are absolutely made like shit. The sticks. If you play a sweaty first-person shooter, and I'm not talking about physically sweating, I'm talking about using the sticks a lot for crouching and sprinting in these first-person shooter games, your sticks are going to fail. And I've experienced that firsthand with not one but two separate first-party PlayStation 5 controllers, and I've had to pay to have somebody replace them with TMR sticks that are supposedly never going to drift, but the stick drift is awful. We never had that problem back in the day, especially like on the Xbox controller and the Sega Dreamcast controller for sure. We never had those issues, and it always goes back to how they were made back in the day. You could find an old beat-up Sega Genesis 3-button controller, and more often than not, it's going to work just fine when you plug it into a console these days. And, batteries are going to run out on these PlayStation controllers, and they'll need to be replaced. And the sticks, I can't get into it, man. I hate that. I hate that you are sold a product that is proven to not last. And that's a terrible thing regarding first-party controllers these days. CRTs are still great. They're still awesome. But the community behind CRTs is highly toxic. And you might agree with me. You might not know what I'm talking about. Get on Facebook and go to the CRT Collective and try to interact with some of these dudes in that group. I don't know what it is about these people. There are certain groups and cliques in the video game community that are just a certain way. Generally, most of the people that you will meet and interact with online are very nice, and they'll be glad to help you out with whatever issues that you're having. But if you get on the CRT Collective and have an opinion, or even ask for help, people just want to troll you, and they just want to call you out for whatever it is that you might have going on. For me, for example, I've been called out because I use these little bricks that I got from Home Depot to prop up my PVM to make it just a little bit higher up so I could see it better when I want to relax on my couch. And people are just annihilating me, telling me that I'm so stupid and this is awful and it looks terrible. And I'm like, but this is not what I asked about. I'm not asking you to comment on my aesthetic. I have a legit issue with the CRT that I would like to see solved, and I'm looking for expertise. So that's a weird thing about the CRT community. The Neo Geo community is kind of like that too, in a way, but they're not as bad as the CRT community. I don't know if you guys have experienced the same thing, but very toxic community for sure. I never really enjoyed the Super Nintendo. I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. I was a Sega Genesis kid. That's my first video game console ever. And I had friends that had the Super Nintendo, but every time I played it, I guess I just never found the right game. I mean, of course, these days I can go back and have a lot of respect and even have fun with games like Chrono Trigger, as well as a few other games like Super Tennis. I know that's obviously not the game that you guys were probably thinking of, but I just haven't found the right game, I guess. Even like the Turrican games, which are pretty fun, platforming shooter games. I prefer Mega Turrican on the Sega Genesis than any of the Turrican games on the Super Nintendo. I prefer Battletoads and Double Dragon on the Genesis as opposed to the Super Nintendo, as well as Aladdin on the Genesis compared to the Super Nintendo. It just goes on and on. I don't have enough nostalgia for the system to really play it a lot these days, and as a result, it's one of my least played systems that I have on my console rack. Tennis games are the only sports games that I've ever really liked. And I guess you could argue, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out as well as the Wii version of Punch-Out. Those are fun. I really like those. Wii Sports, you'll find me playing nothing but tennis. I don't care about the boxing. Bowling is not for me. Baseball, screw that. I'm all into tennis games. And I guess it's because I grew up playing tennis. My mom got me into tennis lessons when I was in middle school, and I'm really thankful that she did that because I have a lot of respect and love for that game. It's such a fun game. If you've never played it in real life, it takes a little bit of a learning curve to get used to it, but once you start hitting that ball and it goes where you wanted it to go instead of over the fence, it's addictive, man. It's so much fun, and a good tennis game can be exactly the same way. Top Spin is one of the best games ever. I love a lot of the 2D tennis games too, such as Final Match Tennis on the PC Engine. That's a hidden gem, man. That's a great game, and I love it to death. There are so many other games that I could name off, but I realize that most of you probably don't care about tennis games. But as far as sports games like football and Madden and, like all the soccer games and stuff like that, NBA Jam or whatever, all the stuff that people are playing these days online, I could not care less about it. The Xbox 360 had the best console dashboard and user interface, and we've gone straight downhill since then. The dashboard on the 360 is awesome, and even though I never grew up with it, I saw my buddy Jonathan who had an Xbox 360 at one time when I had the PS3, and I was always jealous at how cool that user interface was compared to the interface on the PS3. It's a small thing, it's a little nitpick for sure, but I've always really enjoyed that aesthetic, and I think it's really awesome. And PlayStation 5 user interface is okay, but there was, like I said, and I've said this several times on my channel, there's a degree of charm that's just not there. It just feels robotic compared to, having your avatar on the 360. That was a really cool thing, and I wish we had more things like that these days. It really bothers me that Nintendo locks their history behind a subscription fee these days. Of course, what I'm referring to is the Nintendo Switch Online service. You can play a handful, and in some cases a double handful, of Nintendo IPs and old school games with their online service on the Switch. One could argue that it's amazing that they're doing this. They're preserving their history that way. You've got all sorts of Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. You've got Nintendo NES as well as the Super Nintendo, and now they've included Nintendo 64 games and GameCube games as well. That's cool, but at the same time, you have to pay a subscription fee to enjoy those games, and I'm not about that. I wish they would sell these games individually, instead of having to lock yourself to a subscription fee. I'm all against that. Like I said before with the battle passes and stuff, I hate subscription fees. I hate to deal with subscription fees for watching TV shows and movies and stuff, and I don't pay for them anymore. I just don't. I don't want to have to pay $15 a month to have a selection of either games or movies presented to me that I may or may not be into. What happened to the days where we could be very selective with what we want to watch and the TV shows and the movies and stuff like that, and now video games. Nintendo has a selection of games, and they might not be your favorite. So why would you pay a subscription fee for something like that. I don't know. I really hate that Nintendo is going about it this way. They didn't do this in the past. Like on the Wii, they had the Virtual Console, and they had each individual game that you could buy like that. And I wish that we were seeing more of that. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter to me because I'm not paying for it. And it's kind of sad to see that they're taking their history and just turning it into a Netflix-like thing, which is just, it's weird. It's a weird time to be alive. I've outgrown open world games as well as turn-based JRPGs. I don't know if it's just a me thing. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I don't have as much time to play video games as you might think. Being a YouTuber, this is not my full-time job. Maybe it will be one day, but as of right now, this is like a side hustle for me, and I enjoy it. I love spending a lot of time into it, but it takes a lot of time to edit videos, man, and to write out scripts. You know, obviously I don't have one for this video, but the most recent video that I did regarding the light guns, the Timebreaker light guns, I really wanted to do that one right, so I sat down and wrote out a script. It took me like a solid week of constant work in the mornings. I would wake up and spend several hours getting that video done. So the prospect of an open world game or a JRPG where you have to do a lot of, you know, grinding, and there's a ton of story, like 90 hours of story, and especially the open world thing, being thrown into an open world and just do whatever you want, that can be really difficult to commit to. And it's not for the reason that you might think. It's overwhelming because, you know, I might get busy doing other things, and then I'll forget once I jump in the open world. I'm in some random area, like, how did I get here again? What was I doing? Do I really want to do what I was actually doing when I quit the game last, or do I want to try to do something else? And that's just a vicious circle that keeps going and going and going, and open world games just don't do it for me anymore. I had so much fun with Skyrim when it came out, Ghost of Tsushima, and then Ghost of Yotei. That's where it started to fall off for me. I was really into Ghost of Yotei, and it's a great game, but I couldn't commit to it. The same thing with Octopath Traveler 0. I initially got really deep into it, but I just find myself having a hard time keeping up with it. There's too much to keep up with, and I would much rather spend my free time, what little free time I do have to play games for myself these days, I would much rather play like a platformer or, you know, a first-person shooter or something like that, something that doesn't take as much time to commit to, and something that doesn't require you to remember a whole bunch of stuff. You got to go do this and do that and do this. I just want to play a game for 45 minutes. That's all, you know. Retro video gaming has officially become way too expensive, and it's been that way for years now. And some of you might disagree, some of you might wholly agree with me, but it is not worth collecting anymore, at least for me. I've got myself set up in a little nest that I'm happy with. I've got the ODEs and the flashcards and stuff. I can capture gameplay footage to preserve that history, and I can show off that history on my YouTube channel. I can show you guys some of the greatest games on the Sega Saturn and some of my favorite games on the Sega Dreamcast, you know, and I have every tool to be able to do that. I'm not breaking the law. I'm not selling anything to anybody or anything like that. I go to these retro game conventions, and I've played music at a couple of them, and I've had time to walk around, and some of the prices that these games are fetching, they should not be that much. And I know it's supply and demand, but even some of the more common games that there's still, you know, millions of out there in the world, they're by no means rare. They're selling for upwards of $100, and I think it's super weird to pay over $100 for a video game. That being said, I've done it myself. Mainly, I think the game that I've spent the most money on is Spike Out Battle Street for the original Xbox. And don't ask me why I did it. I just really wanted that game. It was a weird Sega beat 'em up. Those are two of my favorite things on this planet when it comes to video games, beat 'em ups and Sega. And so I had to try it out. Is it a great game? Not necessarily, but it's a rare game, and it's very difficult to find. And I just wanted to have it. That mentality keeps a lot of you going. I just want to have it, you know. I just want to have this game. It's rare, and I want to spend money on it, and I want to say that it's in my collection. I can look at it and touch it and play it whenever I want to. That sort of thing goes away, or at least it did for me. You know, I still have a collection of maybe 400 games, physical games on my shelf, and that's nice. And aesthetically, it does look nice in my game room, and it looks good for a backdrop or whatever. And it's nice to be able to go to the game library and pick out a game that you might want to play physically. But there comes a time where you end up being a little bit of a hoarder, and I never wanted to be that myself. I'm trying to keep my game collection small enough to where it's not overflowing on this one big game shelf that I have, and I like to keep it personal for me. I'm not just going to buy a game because it's cheap or whatever. I want to buy a game because I'm legitimately interested in it, or if it's something that I think I might like. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at on game collecting. I think I'm done with paying a lot of money for overpriced video games that you could play on an ODE or a flash card, or even emulate if that's your thing. For me, though, I just want to be able to play the game on original hardware. I don't care how it's done. Most controversial opinion, I saved that one for last, and I bet you a lot of you are going to know exactly what this is. I honestly believe the Sega Dreamcast is the best video game console ever made. And it's ironic because it failed. It was a failure. It floundered almost instantly after it came out. It only had a few years, and they went all guns blazing. They went all out and released some really great titles. And I think history will show that it was one of the best console launches ever, because you had Sonic Adventure come out with it. You know, Crazy Taxi was a great game. Jet Grind Radio was one of the more unique games on that system, not to mention all of the different peripherals that you got. Not counting your Sega Dreamcast controller with the visual memory unit memory card with the screen and everything. But there were so many great games that came out for that system in the short time that it was around, and it just could not compete with the DVD player that was the PlayStation 2. No strike against the PS2. I've had plenty of memories of that system myself. Growing up with that, it was a great system, great console. I really did enjoy it. But these days, man, the Dreamcast was such a great system, and a lot of you are sleeping on it. It's a great system, and it's one of the last true iconic systems that had an identity. The PlayStation 5, you might think it's the greatest console ever, but you can't argue with the fact that it's not that much different from the Series X. And Nintendo's doing its own thing, and as they always have, but we're missing identities with these consoles. And the Sega Dreamcast, man, I have fond memories of that console having a very strong identity, and that's why it's one of my favorite consoles ever. There's so many great experiences of different varieties too, with all your different peripherals like the twin stick, the arcade stick, the fishing rod controller, the light guns. The list goes on and on, man. That console gave you gaming experiences. And these days, a console can give you pretty much the same experience that you can get on Steam, which is kind of sad. We've lost that identity. But for me, I don't know how you guys feel about it. I'd like to know what your favorite video game system is of all time. But for me, that's clearly the Sega Dreamcast. I mean, look at this shirt. Look at it. I'm wearing a Sega Dreamcast shirt. It's the best console ever made. That's the end of it. Well, I hope you guys are still with me after that long list of polarizing opinions, and I would love to hear what you guys think about it now that we're at the end of this video. Is there anything that I said that you strongly disagree with? And if so, tell me why. And if there's anything that you agree with, let's have a discussion about it. Thank you so much for subscribing and watching this video. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching the channel. I've got a lot more videos in the description below if you want to check those out while you're here. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the very next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Hey there, everybody. Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd, and still a very highly opinionated man. Last week, I did a video called Unpopular Retro Video Game Opinions, and a lot of you guys really seemed to like that video. Be honest, when I posted that video, I was thinking that I was going to get slayed alive for some of these opinions, but to my surprise, a lot of you guys seem to agree with me on most of it. So I've got 30 more opinions, and we'll see if we can keep that going or not. But it's really been awesome to hear from you guys and hear about your opinions and your experiences, and I think that's what this YouTube channel should be all about, sharing experiences with each other. Number 1, handheld gaming is very uncomfortable, and I tend to avoid it. This has always kind of been the case for me. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, there are so many great handheld consoles such as the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and then you've got the DS line, all of which have some really, really great games. But these days, I don't know what it is. I don't like to play on a handheld console. And I think, honestly, it's because it's just so uncomfortable. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older or what, but it's highly uncomfortable for me to sit anywhere in any position with a handheld console, and I would just prefer to play on my television these days. And I think as a result of that, I'm missing out on a lot of really great handheld-only games that you can only play on that specific handheld, or of course emulation if that's your thing. But even the Nintendo Switch 2, the display in handheld mode is crazy good. It looks amazing. It really does. But I hardly ever do that. And I feel like I paid for a console and I'm not utilizing the entire thing, if that makes sense. I only really play that console on my television. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for me, it's like we already spend so much time on our phones, and it's not just for, pleasure or passing the time watching videos and stuff, but we have to look at our phones to answer emails and text messages and stuff like that, and it's already enough of a pain to have to be looking down all the time like that, and I just don't prefer to play video games that way anymore. I did a lot when I was a kid. The Sega Genesis Nomad is really awesome, and I really do love that handheld, but I don't use it as much just for that reason. My neck can't handle it. It weighs a lot, especially with the battery upgrade that I have for it, so looking down on it is really not that comfortable. So before we move on to the next section, can we all just take a moment, take a deep breath, relax your face, relax your muscles in your face, and just do this. Just lean back and not be looking down and feel how good that actually is. Okay, let's move on to the next section. This next one's going to get me in a lot of trouble, and I know that. I knew that as I was writing it on this piece of paper, but I do not like Super Smash Brothers. I think Super Smash Brothers is a poor excuse for a fighting game. I said it. I know a lot of you are already typing. I can feel it. I can taste you typing right now. I don't like Super Smash Brothers. I'm sorry. It's just not my idea of a fighting game, and I don't even classify it as a fighting game in my head. I grew up playing Street Fighter and Tekken and Soul Calibur. All of those are just great fighting games that are all very different from one another, but they all share the same premise. You've got a 2D fighting situation, and your controls are very precise, and you have to learn different moves and button combinations to make that work, to try to surprise your opponent with a move that they don't see coming. Smash Bros is exactly like that too, and that's the crazy thing about it, is that it's just all about the Nintendo characters for me. Every Nintendo character that's in there does their own special moves, and that's great, and it's kind of cool, but it just never was for me. I never could get into it. And yes, you could go ahead and say it. I know you're planning on saying it anyway. It's a skill issue. You just suck at the game, so that's why you don't like it. I never spent enough time to really suck at it or to find out if I'm good at it or not. It's incredibly boring to me. It's so floaty, It's on a 2D space, and you jump up and get on platforms and stuff, and I don't want to do that if we're playing a fighting game. If we're going to fight, whether it's fisticuffs or weapons, we should be on the ground together. I never liked the floatiness of Super Smash Brothers, and every time I sat down to attempt to enjoy it, it just made me want to play what I would consider a proper fighting game, like Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, Tekken, something like that. Number 3, I actually like playing beat-em-ups with an arcade stick. Now, this is just a really super specific one, I know that, but I really enjoy using an arcade stick with a beat-em-up if I can. Of course, I'm talking about like Streets of Rage, specifically Streets of Rage 4. If you've got that game on PC, then you can use a plethora of different arcade sticks with it. If you've never tried that before, it's actually really a lot of fun. What separates Final Fight from Streets of Rage is that in Streets of Rage, you've got a couple of different special moves that you can do, and the controls to make that possible is a lot like an actual fighting game. It's not necessarily your Hadouken style, but if you press over and then punch, Axel does that grand upper, that fire uppercut, which is really satisfying, and it feels really great to do that with an arcade stick. Granted, I can still play that game with the controller, and it works just fine, but there are so many great beat-em-ups that really shine with an arcade stick, and maybe that's just a me thing, but I try to seek that out if I can. If a beat-em-up is compatible with an arcade stick, then I'm all about it. Number 4, the PlayStation D-pad is among the worst D-pads ever made, and we've just gotten so used to it at this point that we never even think about that fact anymore. Think about the D-pad, the directional pad. In history, we've used some great D-pads, especially for platformers, 2D-based games. I realize that the times they are a-changin', and 3D has completely taken over, and we're lucky to get a AAA 2D game these days. But the D-pad has been around in the PlayStation lifecycle since the first one, back in the mid-90s. That D-pad was never comfortable for me, and it's because they operate like singular buttons. And I know that if you take these things apart, you'll notice that it's all one solid piece. The D-pad isn't individual buttons, like your face buttons are. But still, I never was comfortable with that, especially in fighting games and especially in platformers, man. I like the ability to be able to rotate your thumb on forward and down or forward and up if need be. And you can do it on the PlayStation controller, but it's just not as comfortable as, say, like a Super Nintendo D-pad or even a Sega Genesis D-pad. I think it's really strange that we've just grown accustomed to this crappy D-pad. You know, it's great for menus, I'll give them that. If you want to cycle through some options and some menu screens, the PlayStation D-pad is one of the best in the world for that. But as far as acting as like a movement button, you know, the D-pad for the PlayStation, it just never was for me. I never liked it. Number 5, 2D games have always been more interesting to me than 3D games. I still enjoy to play 3D games, of course, you know, because how could you not in this day and age? But I've always been more attracted to 2D games no matter what time period that we're in, if it's back in the day or 2D games that come out now. I don't know what it is about it, but it just makes more sense to me, you know, and I have a lot of favorite games that are 3D games. But as far as like the overall aesthetic, I feel like I get into a 2D game more. And that might have something to do with the gameplay and the art direction. I think that if you can present a game to me that is really fun to play and is beautiful in 2D, then that is a statement as an artist. And I know that these days 3D games are some of the best ever made and we're really lucky to have them. But to be honest, it does feel a little strange to me to play a 3D game with all of these graphics that are trying to look as real as possible. 2D games just speak to me more. I don't know what it is. I appreciate when a game is art. And, you know, it is art to have the 3D games that look realistic and stuff, but I always gravitate towards 2D games, and I think that's a no-brainer. A lot of you will probably feel the same way. Number 6, another video game crash is likely coming very soon. This is a big one, and I'm just an outsider looking in on this one. I don't have any background in economics, nor do I have any background in the video game industry. I'm just a dude that likes video games, but I enjoy video game history as well, you know? I'm basically akin to the guy that really likes Civil War history, but I am no means the Civil War historian that actually has credentials, if that makes sense. What I'm seeing, though, is the first video game crash happened pre-NES, and it was because of the Atari 2600. Basically, all the games were coming out without any filter, and anybody could make games for it, and it was just a mess. We're not seeing that. I mean, we kind of are. I don't know if you've been on the PlayStation Store or the Nintendo eShop lately, but there's just a lot of crap on there. You know, there is a lot of crap that rightly does not belong there. It's so weird, man. It's so weird to see all these crappy games on an official store, and I feel like they just keep coming out, but that's not the reason, I think, for the video game crash. Obviously, it's because things are becoming way too expensive. It's getting up to the $1,000 mark if you want to own a system. Like the PlayStation is getting up there, the Xbox is getting up there, and just recently, the Nintendo Switch 2 received a price hike as well. But I still have hope that video games aren't going to crash completely. I just think that they are going to be just for rich people. Only rich people can play the latest and greatest video games, but I do have hope in the future because of the Neo Geo AES Plus. We're seeing a console that has historically been astronomically expensive and only for rich people, but they are remaking it and they're selling it at a very attractive price point of just $250. That gives me hope for the future, and I think in addition to the video game market kind of crashing with newer video games, we might see a resurgence in older video games that the middle class and even poor people can probably afford. You can call that a prediction if you want. I have no idea what's really going to happen, but I honestly believe that we're going to have some sort of video game crash happen in the next 10 years because things are just getting way too expensive, and eventually people are going to throw their hands up and say, I just can't do this anymore. Number 7, if a used game doesn't have the manual or the original box, I probably will not buy it. That's a very specific one. That's obviously me having a super deep pet peeve / OCD thing. It's not that I'm like a super completionist, but I just know that it's going to be really difficult to find the manual going forward. And I'm thinking about, in the future, do I want to keep all my video games for the rest of my life? And if so, are my loved ones going to keep these games themselves, or are they going to sell them off? There's all sorts of things that could happen. I might get in a sticky spot one day. Who knows? You know, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But if I get in a sticky spot and I need to sell these things, having the manual and the original case will go a long way with multiple games in selling it and getting more money out of them. But that being said, I do find a little bit of joy in being the completionist, and I will find games sometimes, and if it's a super common game, you know, I will try to hunt down the manual. I'll go ahead and pay the money and get the game and try to hunt down the manual, but that's always what comes after. If I ever buy a game that's not complete, some part of me just wants to make it complete, and sometimes that's really difficult to do. For instance, I went to a game exchange and I found the case for Gauntlet Dark Legacy on the original Xbox. That's by far probably the best iteration of that game. It came out on multiple consoles at the time, but I brought it to the front desk and the guy was like, you won't believe this, but we actually just sold the disc. The story was that a customer came in specifically looking for that game, and they couldn't find the case. And that makes perfect sense because I actually found the case in the Xbox 360 section. So the dude was like, well, here, you just take the case and the manual and that's fine. But we don't have the game because we already sold the disc-only copy. Okay, so now I've got an empty case with the manual. So naturally, yes, I had to complete that. So what did I do? Get on eBay, find a decent price for a disc-only copy. And it was so satisfying to put that in the case. And now I have both the case, the game disc itself, and the manual. That's the kind of thing that I really enjoy. Number 8, cozy games, quote unquote, aren't just for gamer girls, quote unquote. There seems to be a little controversy around the cozy games these days, and that you're weird if you enjoy them, or you must be a girl if you enjoy them. But I really like those kinds of games, to be honest with you, man. I've had a lot of fun both with my girlfriend, Emily, and by myself. But specifically, we've been playing Stardew Valley. We started that up together, and you should really play that game. If you're not into cozy games, that one's one of the best, for sure. It is a really fun game. There's combat in it, although it's not like the most engaging combat. But I really enjoy a game where you can play it for any amount of time. And with a game like that, honestly, you're probably going to be playing it for hours. But my point is, I love it when you can spend time in a game and then at the end of your play session, you can look back and see results. That's what cozy games are to me, you know, and I'm thinking Stardew Valley, and I'm thinking Tomodachi Life. I really like that game. Animal Crossing is another good example. I played that one during the 2020 lockdown, like I'm sure most of us did. I mean, that game really had a good thing going for it during that lockdown. It came out at the perfect time, and everybody was at home playing the shit out of that game. It was a fun game, too. But, you know, I don't play them all the time. I need a little bit of a rotation in my gameplay, so I don't play them exclusively, but I do enjoy them from time to time, especially if there's a co-op aspect that my girlfriend Emily and I can enjoy together. Number 9, I have always enjoyed playing first-person shooters with a controller over mouse and keyboard, and I will fully acknowledge that mouse and keyboard is better. It's better for accuracy, and it's just a better experience altogether. I'm just not the guy that enjoys being at the PC with the mouse and keyboard playing games like that. I've always been a console gamer. I enjoy playing from the comfort of my couch with the controller. That's how I've always done it. And I will admit that first-person shooters like Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and more recently Battlefield 6 and all the other Battlefields that I used to play back in the day, I got them on PC, and I enjoyed them on PC. But I don't know what it is, man. It's just an uncomfortable gaming situation, and I've tried a lot of different chairs. Maybe it's because I'm a big guy. You know, I'm 6'4". I'm kind of a hefty son of a gun. I don't know. Maybe it's just uncomfortable for me. But I will admit that it is a better experience, and it's much more fun to play that way with the keyboard and mouse. But as for comfort, I just can't get into it that much, man. I would much rather sit on the couch and deal with not being as accurate with the controller. But I don't know how you guys feel. Maybe that's just me. Number 10, new IPs are being vastly outvoted by remakes. Have you ever heard the term vote with your wallet? I think most of you have been voting with your wallet for remakes instead of new IPs. Now, I'm not trying to shift blame on anybody in particular, but it's just the general consensus of it, man. We are seeing remake after remake after remake, man, and it is crazy how many remakes have come out since that initial burst of remakes, I think in 2019, 2020, and maybe even a little bit before that. But we've seen a Dead Space remake, we've seen Resident Evil remakes, and apparently we're getting a ton of those too. It's kind of cool seeing the Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater get a remake, but at the same time, you know, where's all the new, fresh ideas? And this is not just related to video games. We're seeing that with movies these days too in the theaters. Not a lot of original things are coming out, and if they are coming out, they're not very good. So I don't know what it is as far as creativity in the last 10 years or so, but it seems to be a lot more popular to take something that's already been proven to be successful and re-release it again, beating that dead horse until he's actually dead. I don't know what it is about that. That being said, I really did enjoy the Resident Evil 4 remake. That's how a remake should be done, and I cannot go back to the original after playing that because it's just so damn good. But I don't know how you guys feel about this. Do you think that remakes should continue going on, or do we need a break from that with some new IPs? I would like something brand new to come out that becomes a huge success, but, that's probably easier said than done. Number 11, new games are taking way too long to make, and I think we should go back to some simpler graphics to combat that. That's going to be a controversial one for sure. So we're talking, of course, about Grand Theft Auto 6, which is coming out this November, as well as The Elder Scrolls 6, which has been in development for a very long time. We got a weird little snippet trailer in 2018, and now we're in 2026 with nothing to go on. They put out Starfield, that had mixed reviews, and now we're waiting for The Elder Scrolls. Meanwhile, we're getting very, very old. The last time we had an Elder Scrolls game, a mainline game, was in 2011. That's a long time ago. That's the year I graduated high school, and now I'm 33. We're getting older, and we're getting older a lot faster. I'm noticing that. As I'm in my 30s, it feels like I just turned 30 like 6 months ago, but in reality, that was 3 years ago. And I'm wondering, when The Elder Scrolls does come out, being a big Elder Scrolls fan myself, will I give a shit by that time? Because it's just taking so long. Let's say that there's an option that you can wait until 2032 for The Elder Scrolls 6, or you can wait one more year and we'll release it, but the graphics aren't going to be the best. Which would you choose? That's an interesting topic for sure. I myself have never been enamored with graphics being the best that they need to be, and I think that's the main reason why these games are taking so long, is because they're so graphically intensive. But me, I'm an old school guy. If you release a good game that has great gameplay and a decent story, and if it has a lot of replay value, odds are I'm going to buy it and play it no matter what the graphics look like. They can look like PS1 graphics for all I care. Maybe that's just a me thing though. I don't know. But The Elder Scrolls 6, I'm really wanting to play it, but I'll be honest with you, I am losing interest in it as time goes on. Of course, when it does come out, I'll probably buy it, but I'm losing interest in it as time goes by. There's no reason that it should take this long. Like I said, it's been since 2011 since we got a mainline Elder Scrolls game. Number 12, Hybrid Heaven is the best game on the Nintendo 64. And a lot of you are going to say Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64. You're going to say the Zelda games, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And it's all a preference thing, but I honestly think that the best game on that system is a game called Hybrid Heaven. This is a Konami game that came out on the Nintendo 64, and it is like an action movie starring Keanu Reeves. It's a 90s action movie with aliens. Long story short, aliens are invading, and you have to beat the shit out of them in an underground lair. And the story gets more convoluted than that as you go along. But it's a really great fighting game. It's a strategy game, too. This game is not a beat-em-up, by the way. It is more of like a strategy fighting game, which is a weird combination of genres. But if we look at Fighting Force on the Nintendo 64, that game runs like ass. It is very, very bad. Very bad. The frame rate is awful, and it takes forever to run across the screen. So I think that they did a really smart thing with this game by making it a one-on-one fighter strategy game. You press a button and time stops and you're frozen there, and then you have all the time in the world to go through and pick which move that you want to do. There's a lot of strategy involved in this because you want to be in the right position to throw a right hook or something like that and make sure that it connects with your opponent. You can get critical hits in that game. You learn new moves as they are performed on you. And you can be all sorts of different types of fighters in that game. You can be a kickboxer, you can be just a boxer in general, or you can be a wrestler. And you can do a combination of all those things. This is my favorite game of all time just for that reason. You can go through and play through it multiple times and be a different person by the end of the game every single time. And it's got a really cool 90s story. Like I said before, I'm a sucker for 90s action movies. And this one fits that genre a lot. I really do think that Hybrid Heaven is the best game on the Nintendo 64. And if you haven't played it before, you should really give it a try. It's a really amazing game. Number 13. The NEC TurboGrafx 16 is a much better console than the original Nintendo, the NES. I know I'm going to get slayed alive for that, but have you really ever played the TurboGrafx 16? Have you ever given it a chance? I realize that that console is a lot less accessible than the NES these days, but if you can emulate it or get your hands on a real console with an EverDrive, it's an amazing experience. That controller itself, Honestly, the D-pad is not that great, but if you can get past that, the turbo switches really do make that console come alive. It's super unique to that system. And yes, I know that we've had third-party and even first-party turbo controls on Nintendo consoles and stuff in the past, but the games on that system are really unique. I've never played anything quite like it, and it's one of my favorite 2D experiences to go back and play some of those games, such as the legendary Axe and Splatterhouse, not to mention some of the other really cool ones like Ninja Spirit. That's a really great game, man. It's almost like the Neo Geo experience. You feel like you're playing a primitive arcade system at home, you know, with those turbo controls and everything. I think they did it right. It's a shame that they didn't last because there were some really great games on that console. They just made some really bad choices with the super graphics and then the PCFX, which ended up being kind of like a, you know, special console with some special games. Some bedroom games, if you will. I enjoy the TurboGrafx 16 a lot, and I reach for that controller a lot more than I do the NES. Number 14, I get unreasonably frustrated when controllers aren't backwards compatible. And I understand that the PlayStation 5 controller has a lot of features that the PlayStation 4 just couldn't handle. You know, like the haptic feedback and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, arcade sticks shouldn't work that way. I recently made a post on my YouTube channel talking about how I wanted to play Absalom, which is a really cool 2D beat 'em up, like we've talked about before. And I wanted to use my Hori Rap 4 arcade stick, which is mainly an arcade stick that's supposed to work with the PC, the PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4. My PlayStation 5 would not allow me to play Absalom with that arcade stick, and it was a huge bummer, man. It was a really huge bummer. And I just hate that. You know, I hate when compatibility is such an issue, especially when you're looking at a PlayStation 5 console. I mean, it's a PlayStation 5 game, and yes, it's technically a PS4 controller, but it's an arcade stick. I don't understand why that compatibility just doesn't fly. I just get unreasonably frustrated at things like that. It's a really big pain in the ass, and I should be able to play a beat 'em up like Absalom with that arcade stick. But if I want to use an arcade stick, I'm going to have to get an updated PlayStation 5 arcade stick, which is terrible. It sucks. Number 15, I always really enjoy the indie games more than I do the AAA titles. I don't know what it is about indie games, but they always were more attractive to me. You know, like Streets of Rage 4 is technically an indie game because it's not made by Sega. They had their blessing on that. But Absalom, another great game, beat 'em up. I like the beat 'em ups, you know, and nobody is really doing AAA beat 'em ups anymore. I mean, we've got the Marvel game and the Ninja Turtles game that came out not too long ago. But what I'm saying is, like, the big blockbuster system sellers, I usually don't get those. Not to mention the fact that the indie games are usually a hell of a lot cheaper than some of these AAA games. And I would rather get 3 indie games than one, you know, $70 AAA title. But maybe that's just me. Number 16, I always wash my hands before I touch a controller. And it's a pet peeve of mine if you don't. Especially after you've eaten, you know, think about eating whatever it is that you might want to eat. If you touch your hands on the food, you need to wash your hands before you touch the controller. The reason for that is you're going to have leftover grease on your controller, especially a bigger controller like the PlayStation 5. I cannot stand it, dude. I cannot stand that. I cannot stand holding a controller with clean hands and then feeling the grease on it. It drives me batshit crazy. I cannot stand it. So I always make it a point to wash my hands after I've eaten. And when my friends come over and we're hanging out having like pizza or whatever, or we grill some burgers and hot dogs and stuff, I always tell them, please wash your hands before you touch my controllers, because after you leave, I have to touch them myself, and if they got grease on them, that gives me the ick. It drives me crazy. And you should wash your hands if you're going to be touching your controllers. If you got controllers that break down or they mess up or something like that, it's probably because you're nasty and you need to wash your hands. Number 17, resellers really don't deserve the hate. You just need to know how to play their game. What I'm talking about is that there's been a big resurgence of people just hating people that buy video games at garage sales and then sell them for a profit. You can feel any type of way about that, but you got to look at it from both angles. Yes, it sucks that these people are getting these games for super cheap and then selling them to you and me for more money, but at the same time, a lot of these resellers have a really good access to these games. They either have a storefront or they put them on the Facebook Marketplace. You might not like to go to garage sales and wake up super early on Saturday mornings to find these things. If you do, then go for it, and you might find some of these games that you can keep for a good price. But resellers are in it to make money, and it sucks that they're taking a hobby that we enjoy, like retro video games. We used to be able to find these for pretty cheap, but now it's getting harder because of the resellers. I have to say that as long as you know how to play the game, then they're good for everyone. And what I'm meaning is you don't want to sell your video game collection to video game resellers, but buying them is often a pretty good deal. You can still find good deals on games at these retro video game stores, but you have to know what to look for, and you have to know what games are going for. There's a website called pricecharting.com. You need to be very familiar with that. And if you're going to take some games to sell or trade, you need to know what your value is. And a lot of times that's where you get screwed on the reselling. You'll take your games in and they'll offer you pretty much nothing for it, and then you lose a lot of money that way. But at the same time, some of their prices for the games that they're selling to you are actually pretty decent. I'll give you an example. There's a reputable video game store in Central Arkansas that I went to. I've spent a lot of money there on some decent games and peripherals and stuff, but I had a collection of N64 stuff that I wanted to trade in an attempt to raise money to get a Nintendo Switch 2 because I'm a Mario Tennis freak. There's a whole video about that if you want to learn more about that. So I used pricecharting.com to learn what the value of my stuff was. And it was right there between $1,200 and $1,300. I brought all that stuff in there. The Nintendo 64 games were complete in box. I even had the box protector to keep them nice and safe and dust free. And they offered me $600 credit or $400 cash. $400 cash is not even enough to get a Nintendo Switch 2 console. But you see what I mean? You have to play their game and you can't submit to them ripping you off. You can't let that happen. And you have to be patient. So I declined that offer, and they even asked me, like, well, is there a reason why you don't want to do this? And I said, absolutely. I know about price charting and I know the value of this, and it's just simply not worth it for me to sell you this stuff, which is much more valuable at this price, and I can get a better price selling it myself. That's exactly what I did. I had to be patient, and that's the kicker. If you're impatient, that's the best way to get the deal done, is to take it to a store, take it and sell your stuff at a loss. I didn't want to do that. Especially at a loss like that. So I waited, put it on the Facebook Marketplace, and I had my stuff sold within a month of me visiting that store. And I'm happy. The guy that bought the games are happy. And that's just all there is to it. You have to know how to play the game, and you can't be susceptible to getting ripped off. Number 18, I always enjoy playing fighting games with my friends over couch co-op style experiences. So we're talking about, Metal Slug. Metal Slug is the classic co-op game at the pizza place and stuff, and thanks to the Neo Geo AES and even the Neo Geo CD, we can play that game from the comfort of our home on a home console. That game has never been super fun for me. I mean, it is fun, but it's not one that I'm just dying to play with my buddies. I would rather both of us play a fighting game together than spend time playing couch co-op games like that. Streets of Rage 4, one of my favorite games ever. We enjoy playing that game together sometimes, but to be honest, I would much rather have a fighting game night than a couch co-op night, and maybe that's just me. I have a lot of history with Soul Calibur and The Last Blade 2 and Dead or Alive and Tekken, Street Fighter, all those games. I'm really into those games, and most of them I'm not really that good at, but I want to get better at it. So I guess that's what I'm really feeling. When you have a platforming co-op game or shooter like Metal Slug, you just got to kind of learn the levels. But there's so much more depth with the fighting game. There's so many moves that you can learn with each and every given character. So it's much more satisfying for me to play with a real human being instead of the computer on a fighting game, because then I learn how to use moves better, if that makes sense. If you have a real person that you're fighting against. I'm just a big fighting game fan, and I'm a competitive person, so that's a no-brainer for me. But you guys might feel a little differently. Number 19, I would much rather use a crummy wireless controller than a first-party wired controller on some of these retro consoles. I just don't have the space for it anymore. And I'm not talking about actual real estate space. I'm talking about controller wire length based on where I'm sitting on the couch and where my consoles are located. I've got a wire rack that I got from Target, and it's really tall, and I can fit almost 30 consoles on that sucker. And having to worry about controller cables and controller extensions has just become a nightmare for me, and I try to avoid it at all costs. As a result, pretty much every single one of my consoles, I think except for the TurboGrafx 16, granted I have the PC Engine variant, the Japanese version of that console, every console except for that one has a dedicated wireless controller. And I'm really happy about that. But some of these third-party controllers are better than others, but I've never really had a terrible experience with third-party controllers. A lot of you are first-party controller stans, man. You will fight all day long to say that first-party controllers are much better, and that that's the way to experience the console. And you can enjoy that yourself, but for me, I would rather have a decent wireless controller that's not the original first-party controller if it means that I can sit comfortably on my couch and not have to deal with wrapping up a controller or dealing with wires. Number 20. Shenmue is very likely never going to be a complete game series, and I've made my peace with that. That's a big controversial one for you Sega fanboys, and especially you Shenmue fanboys. A lot of people really have fond memories of the Shenmue games, and so do I. I played them when I was a kid, and they're really a lot of fun. I've completed all 3 games up to this point. We were very, very lucky to have a Kickstarter campaign to start Shenmue 3 because for the longest time, we thought that game was never going to come out. But what you have to understand now is that game came out and it wasn't great. And that's no fault of Yu Suzuki. I think it has something to do with the publisher and everything like that. But that game did not end in a very satisfying way. And a lot of people did not like the new mechanic of having to constantly feed yourself. And it just seemed like your character was wasting time a lot of the time instead of, progressing the story. And I think after so many years of being left on that cliffhanger in Shenmue 2 in the cave, we really wanted to see something big happen in the story, and it just didn't happen this time. And we're right back where we were back then, man. After Shenmue 3 came out, we're waiting for Shenmue 4. So are we going to be waiting the same amount of time? Is it ever going to happen? I don't know. But I myself had made peace with the fact that it's probably not going to be a complete story just because it's so expensive to make those games and interest is likely waning as time goes on. Not a lot of people are still interested in that franchise. Sega seems to completely have washed their hands of that whole Shenmue thing. I don't know what's going to happen. I would love to see it happen, but I'm not really thinking about it too much anymore. I've made my peace with it. I've played and completed all 3 games and they're great experiences. But as far as the story being complete in a video game sense, I don't think it's going to happen. Number 21, I generally avoid playing the PlayStation 2 these days just because it's incredibly ugly. And what I'm talking about is not the aesthetic of the console itself. It's fine. It's not, handsome or gorgeous, beautiful or anything like that. But I'm talking about the video quality. Historically, the PlayStation 2, especially these days, if you're playing it on a modern display, even with the best quality cables or an upscaler or something like that, it just looks terrible, especially compared to its competitors at the time, like the Dreamcast, GameCube, and original Xbox. PlayStation 2 just does not clean up very nice. It's got some really, really nasty anti-aliasing things going on. It's not beautiful. It's not gorgeous. And even on a 4K OLED with the RetroTink 4K high-quality video upscaler that costs nearly $1,000, the PlayStation 2 just does not clean up very well. Granted, I'll give you this. If you play on a CRT, then it's fine. So anytime that I'm playing the PlayStation 2, I tend to want to do it on a CRT instead of a modern display just because it's just so ugly. It's disgusting. I think the only other console that I can think of that is on par with the ugliness on a modern display would be the Nintendo 64. That console's really not cleaning up that great either. Number 22, the Nintendo GameCube has about 15 or so games that are worth playing today. This is a big one. I know a lot of you guys really don't like me talking bad about Nintendo because you feel some type of way about it. But as somebody that didn't grow up with that console and has gone back to review the history and enjoy the games on that console, I can tell you that it's mostly Mario stuff. There are some really good ones on there like Chibi Robo. I really like that game. Super Monkey Ball is one of my favorite games ever made. I love Super Monkey Ball. That game is awesome, Other than that, I could take it or leave it. I mean, there's a couple of games like Custom Robo that was really fun. Cubivore is a really weird game, but I'm not really there for all the Mario titles like Mario Sunshine. I didn't really get into that game very much. I did like Mario Power Tennis. It's a pretty good, decent game of Mario Tennis. It's not the best by any means. But you see what I'm saying. Like, most of the games on there were multi-platform games anyway. There was a lot of games that was on the original Xbox as well as the PlayStation 2. And some of those games are just better on the original Xbox. I know we got Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube, which is nice, as well as the Skies of Arcadia game that came out. It was basically just a better version of the Dreamcast version, and that's great, but I don't know what it is about the GameCube, man. I really do like it. It's a really cool system, and it's got some great games on there, but there's just not a plethora of games that are on there like the PlayStation 2 or even the Dreamcast that I would go back to and play a lot. Number 23, Red Dead Revolver is a great game on the PlayStation 2, and we should have got another game in that series. And I know what you're thinking.
What are you talking about, Travis? We did. We got Red Dead Redemption and then Red Dead Redemption 2. That's two sequels to that game. I don't see it that way. Those are standalone games with two different characters. What I'm talking about is the story in Red Dead Revolver was so great. It was your typical action movie, and I like that sort of thing. I want some more of that. I think we needed to see a comeback. The last time that we had a really good action genre that was consistently great and admittedly a little cheesy at times was in the 90s, and I would like to see that make a comeback. I like the character of Red Harlow in Red Dead Revolver, as well as Annie Stokes, and you've got Jack Swift, I think that was, what was his name? The English dude with the two revolvers, the dual pistols there. That was a really cool game. It was a really cool story with a surprise ending, and the whole thing came full circle, and it's a revenge story. And at the end, Red has that iconic line that I won't repeat here regarding reward money and stuff, and his friendships and stuff like that. It's a really great game and a really cool protagonist, and I feel like they really kind of had a missed opportunity by not including him that much in later iterations. It's like they just took that great character and just said, okay, we're doing something else now. And I will admit, Red Dead Redemption, especially Red Dead Redemption 2, they are timeless classics, but I just miss the Red Dead Revolver stuff, and I wish that we could see another iteration with those characters again. Number 24, the PlayStation 3 controller was amazing back in the day, but it's really difficult to go back to today. And I think that's because of the muscle memory on the PlayStation 5 controller. When's the last time you touched a PlayStation 3 controller? The sticks feel very, very weird, man. They're huge, and the travel distance is freaking long, man. Especially compared to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 controllers. It feels like you were traveling a mile with that stick in an attempt to go up, and it didn't feel like that back in the day. I don't know what it is. I played a lot of Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 on that console, and it was a great time, and I felt like I was really accurate with those sticks when I was playing those games. But I felt like if I went back to play a game like that today with that controller, I would do terribly. It's crazy how much time can go by and a controller can change just a few little different things, and then you build muscle memory for that, and then you go back to something that you used to know, but muscle memory has really screwed you over like that. I don't know about you guys, but going back to the PlayStation 3 controller, it feels like my hands are huge now, but I feel like, back then I was a teenager, probably like 15, 16, 17 when I was playing the PlayStation 3. My hands haven't grown that much. It's just the PlayStation 5 controller is much larger, and the PlayStation 3 controller is a lot smaller now compared to how I used to feel it back in the day. But it's really tough for me to play PlayStation 3 games with that controller now. It just feels wrong. Number 25, the Facebook Marketplace is annoying, but it is still the very best way for you to buy and sell video games these days. I've got a whole video talking about the Facebook Marketplace and how to use it properly. You can still find great deals on the Facebook Marketplace. You can still find people that don't know what they have. And if you're quick about it, you can scoot on in there and get something for a really great deal, especially console bundles. I'm noticing that with the rise of the Nintendo Switch 2 and it being so expensive, a lot of these moms in the suburbs are taking their kids' old consoles like the Wii U and more recently the first Nintendo Switch, and they're just trying to get rid of it and get cash for it so they can buy other things, closet cleanouts and stuff like that. It's annoying to use the Facebook Marketplace as a seller because you get people that message you all the time and they want to give you personal information or ask stupid questions. But if you have patience, you can still find and make great deals on that platform, and it's much better than Craigslist. Craigslist has been a dying thing for a long time. You guys ever get on Craigslist anymore? It's been a long time for me, but I'm on that Facebook Marketplace a little bit more than I'd like to admit. I'm on there at least once or twice a day, just seeing what I can find, and occasionally I'll find something good, but I'm also on there selling stuff too, because I've got stuff that no longer sparks joy, and what better way to get rid of that than put it on the Facebook Marketplace and try to find somebody that wants to pay you a decent amount of money for it. Number 26, video game composers are highly underrated. I think all of us could agree with this to some extent, but here's the question for you. Do you ever listen to video game soundtracks outside of the video game? I do all the time. I mean, I know I'm a strange case because I'm a guitar player, I'm a musician, and I do a lot of video game arrangements on one acoustic guitar. That's what I like to do. I've done music from Sonic the Hedgehog, as well as like weird ones like Ristar. I've done Legend of Dragoon music. I've done all sorts of like Revenge of Shinobi and Streets of Rage music on one single instrument just because it's a challenge and I enjoy that challenge and I respect the music. A lot of people don't like video game music at all, especially not outside of the game. And what's funny to me is that on my official Facebook page, I got a Travis Bowman Music Facebook page, I shared a video of me playing the Pokemon Gym Leader Battle theme. And some old guy got on there that's, I guess, been following me for a long time, and he said something along the lines of, I like the way that you play the guitar and everything, but I can't relate to video game stuff, so I can't listen to you anymore. I could take that multiple different ways. It could hurt my feelings, or I could just brush it off and just move on or everything, but I had to ask him this question. And that question was, if you didn't read the text that said that this was from a video game, do you think you'd feel differently about it? Instrumental music is great, man. It's one of my favorite things to listen to. I mean, I could listen to pop music and stuff and have people, try to have an agenda with their lyrics and try to tell me a story or whatever. But I would much rather listen to the music. That's how I've always operated. And video game music is perfect for me because it's instrumental stuff and it's telling you a story inside of that instrumental music. Think about the music from Skyrim and how great of a storyteller that was. Just when you're walking through Skyrim, the whole thing, you're going through the streets of Whiterun, it tells a story. It really puts you in the setting and gives you that environment. And it really does a great job of doing that with that composer. There's a lot of great games that have such iconic soundtracks that I can't help but want to listen to it outside of the game. A lot of times when I'm driving in my car, I'll put on video game music without any lyrics just because that's how I like to drive. I like to have ideas go through my head about how I can play these songs myself, and I like to process these songs in my head and try to figure out how difficult it would be to play the guitar using these songs. So I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing. I would be very curious to know, out of all you guys that are watching this video, do you ever do that? Do you ever listen to video game music, or you just try to keep that inside the game itself? Number 27, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I simply do not give a shit. Video game grading is incredibly dumb. I'm going to go ahead and say it. That is a stupid way to spend your money. I get collectors are weird. Collectors like to do a lot of weird stuff. But it's so stupid to do video game grading because you're grading an item that is meant to be taken out of the box and meant to be played. And I mean, collectors are weird. I know I just said that, but I never got it myself. I would never, ever spend money on a graded video game, because what is the point of that? I can understand with like baseball cards and maybe even some more video game related cards like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. I guess I can understand that, but then again, I wouldn't be spending money on those cards anyway. I'm not a card game guy. But when people want to flaunt their original Pokemon Yellow incomplete in the box, and this company has graded this game a 9.8 or whatever, and now it's worth $1 bajillion. That is so stupid to me. I don't know what it is about video game grading, but it's annoying. I don't care for that sort of thing. Video games are meant to be played. Sure, some of them are more valuable than others, and obviously if you have it in a plastic case that is sealed, it makes it worth more for some reason. But I would never spend my money like that, ever. If I'm going to spend money on a video game, then I should be able to play it. And that's all there is to it. Number 28. The 2D Pokemon games are better RPGs than the 2D Final Fantasy games. How's that for controversial? That's just my opinion. I enjoy a good RPG from time to time, and I've played a lot of them throughout my life. But for some reason, the Pokemon games, as far as the gameplay of an RPG, is much more satisfying to me than your typical Final Fantasy game. And I think the reason for that is it moves you along a little bit better. In Final Fantasy, you got to do a lot of grinding by walking out in the overworld and getting into random battles. You do get in random battles in Pokemon as well, but instead of having your party be real people that have magic and stuff like that, every single person in your party has 4 things that they can do. It's very simple. You've got 4 attack moves, and you can use items if you need to, such as healing and stat boosters and stuff like that. But I've always enjoyed that formula of you've got all these Pokemon creatures that have different strengths and weaknesses, such as the fire characters, such as Charmander and Charizard and stuff like that. They're obviously going to be very powerful, but they have a weakness to water and ground type moves. I like that aspect of it. It's not too convoluted and complicated. You have basic elements to deal with, and that's pretty much it. I've really enjoyed that RPG series a lot more than I have anything else. And a lot of you are probably thinking, Why is this dude comparing these two? Because those are two completely different things. I'm just saying, personally, I would much rather play a Pokemon RPG like the first couple of games in Gold and Silver than the earlier Final Fantasy games. And it just feels more compact to me. The Final Fantasy games seem too big and too overwhelming, and you got to go from town to town. On the Pokemon games, it's very, very simple as far as where you're supposed to go next. With the Final Fantasy games, it doesn't feel like that all the time to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because I grew up with the Pokemon games and I didn't play the Final Fantasy stuff until a little bit later when I was in my preteens. I played the Final Fantasy IV and I really enjoyed that. And then I moved on to Final Fantasy VIII, which of course is a 3D game, but still. I don't know how you guys feel about that. That's a weird one for sure, but that's definitely how I feel. Number 29, playing a 4:3 aspect ratio game in 16:9 is generally considered to be a sin. And I would fully agree on that for the most part, but at the same time, I do it sometimes. Sometimes I play a 4:3 game in 16:9. The best example of this, I think, is on the Game Boy Advance. If you want to play an original Game Boy cartridge, you can press the L and R buttons to stretch the screen to make it fill the entire screen instead of being in that smaller window like it would be on the original Game Boy or the Game Boy Color. This can be translated to games on the TV too if you've got an upscaler. Most recently, what I've found is I like playing the Phantasy Star Online on the GameCube in particular with that stretched aspect ratio. Even though it's not supposed to be like that, I see no problem with it. You can still see everything. You know, when you deal with stretching an image like that in an aspect ratio that it's not supposed to be in, the characters get a lot smaller. You know, their heads kind of shrink down and they just kind of flatten out a little bit. But I don't really notice that as much on that particular game. Granted, I don't do this all the time. This is just something that I discovered recently. Like, you know, it blew up in 16:9 as I was playing it after fiddling with some settings, and I was like, you know, this is actually not half bad. And, you know, the Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance, original Game Boy games that are not supposed to be stretched like that, they're not that bad either, but it's a preference thing for sure. And here's the last controversial one at the very end of this video. Console experiences are a lot better once they're no longer being supported. Think about the 3DS from Nintendo. Think about the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. We're seeing a lot of really cool innovations in those consoles now, particularly the 3DS. I don't know if you're familiar with the console modding scene on 3DS. I'm not going to go into it in great depth or anything, but you can do a lot of amazing things with these games on that system now. And that's one of the reasons why it's so heavily coveted these days, is that you've got an entire history at your fingertips with that 3DS. You can get all sorts of games on there, including homebrew games. You could really customize that experience on that 3DS. Not only can you play 3DS games, but you can play DS games, Game Boy Advance games. If you're a fan of emulation, then you're really going to like the 3DS and its capabilities. The PlayStation 3. I've upgraded the hard drive in my PlayStation 3 to a 1 terabyte drive. And thanks to some custom firmware, I've been able to do a lot of really cool things on that PlayStation 3 that you couldn't do before. I'm using a file transfer program on my computer to take games that I own legitimately and transfer them back and forth. You know, stuff like that is really, really cool. And I love seeing the fan community kind of take over once the console stops being supported by its original creator. You know, the PlayStation 3 is great like that. We're seeing the Xbox 360 become jailbroken at a software level instead of having to do the JTAG stuff or whatever it's called. I forget what that modding process is called. But usually if you wanted to mod an Xbox 360, you have to open the thing up and do some soldering. But somebody figured out how to do it at a soft modding level with a digital copy of a couple of different games. I think that's really cool, because before it was like this console is what it is and you can't get inside of it and do whatever you want to do with it. But it's really cool to see the fan community take over and really get inside the nitty gritty of the console and show us what it's really, really capable of without limits. So those are 30 more opinions that I have regarding retro video games and video gaming in general, I guess. Once again, I would love to hear what you guys think about these in the comment section below. You can find the timestamps in the comments as well as the video description if you want to go through each topic and tell me how you feel about it. I really appreciate you guys watching this video as well as subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you're into retro video games, then you're in the right place. I've got all sorts of reviews about consoles, console modifications, controllers, new and old, as well as a bunch of other tutorial videos and stuff like that. So if you like this video, you're probably in the right place, and I encourage you to stick around while you're here and watch some more videos. You can find those in the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the very next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Hey there everybody, Travis Bowman here. I'm a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd, and I know what you're asking yourself. Is he really about to do another one of these? And yes, I am. We are going to beat this dead horse until it is no longer recognizable as a horse anymore. And it's not just me. This is mass requested by you guys. So we're going to put a third installment to make this a trilogy. This is even more unpopular retro video game opinions. Once again, this is a discussion video, so feel free to disagree or agree with me in the comment section below. And let's just have a great discussion about something that we all enjoy, retro video games. Number one, I still find it really hard to believe that Mario is the most iconic video game character of all time. This is super strange to me, and it seems like nobody else really questions it, which is bizarre. Art is so subjective, you know, and video games are considered by a lot of people to be a form of art. And you could argue with that all day, but at the end of the day, what we have is a platform that allows us to become the protagonist, something that motion pictures cannot offer us. We go to the movie theater and we watch the movie, and we can pretend that we're the protagonist, but in a video game, you really do control exactly what happens, and that can be all sorts of different video games, from the original Mario up until like the new 007 game that's coming out very soon. You get to be James Bond. And it looks great. It looks almost real. That's kind of crazy, you know? Many people consider Mario to be like the video game character. He's the most recognizable, most loved video game character of all time. To be clear, I don't hate Mario. I'm not a Mario hater. I don't really enjoy the games as much as some other people do. But I just find it bizarre that he's the most iconic video game character of all time, you know? Because think about what you can do in a video game and what you can create. You know, you can go as far back as like the caveman days and as far into the future as like space aliens and stuff like that. And there are several games that fit those genres to a T. So why did an Italian plumber become the most iconic video game character of all time when you have dragons and you have alien creatures and you have like lovable animals and stuff? Why did this Italian plumber with a mustache and a red hat become the most iconic video game character of all time? And I think a lot of people will go to bat with Mario being just the most relatable character. He's a human being, he's in love with a pretty blonde girl, and he does his best. I guess it could come down to something as simple as that, but still, I find it odd sometimes to think about that fact that there are so many cool characters like Spyro the Dragon, and you've got Sonic the Hedgehog, I guess, and even some really obscure ones like Ristar. He's a shooting star, you know, and you've got Gex. I mean, Crash Bandicoot. I could go on and on. There's so many iconic video game characters that arguably would deserve that iconic spot, but for some reason, the number one is always Mario, and I just find that bizarre. That's all. Number two, I never really liked the Halo games that much, but I really highly respect them. This is going all the way back to the original Xbox. Now, I never had one myself when I was a kid, when the system was still relevant, but I had several buddies that did, and we used to hang out together, you know, like we used to do when we were kids. We would go over to each other's houses, we would have sleepovers and stuff, and we would drink Mountain Dew and eat chips and play video games all night long. Two of my buddies had Xboxes, so we would system link them together and play that basically 8-player Halo. You got 4 people on this console, 4 people on that console, and you would play Halo and team up and kill each other all the time. And that was a really great system because you could just switch people out. You know, like me and my buddy are over here, and I'm going to go join this group of people and on the other side of the room, you know, that kind of thing. Halo was a really cool experience just for that alone. But as far as the game and the gameplay, it was never one of my favorite first-person shooters. I mean, it's really cool, and I cannot deny that Master Chief is one of the most iconic video game characters of all time. It's a really unique story. The gameplay is really unique and fun. I don't know what it was. I just never got into it myself, and maybe it's just because I was more interested in other things at the time, you know, like platformers or something like that. But lots of respect for Halo. It's a great series, and we were lucky to even have it. But it just never was for me. And it's even weirder these days because it's such an iconic Xbox icon.
Master Chief, Halo. That's an Xbox thing. And we're about to get a remake that's going to be on the PlayStation 5. So it's really strange how the times they are a-changing. Number 3, I'm much more attracted to a console if it has weird peripherals. And that could be controllers, memory cards, just weird stuff, you know. The Dreamcast is obviously the prime example of this. I love the Dreamcast because there's so many different unique ways to experience these games other than just using the first-party controller. I mean, you've got Seaman and Alien Front Online that uses a microphone inside of the controller. That was a really super unique thing at that time. And on top of that, you've got the arcade stick that's designed to be used with the Sega Dreamcast. You've got the twin sticks. You can do some of those mech shooters and stuff. And you've got some really weird peripherals like the VMU. I feel like nobody ever really talks about the VMU anymore, man. It's such an interesting add-on for that console, and I'm really, to this day, very surprised that we have not seen a screen inside of a first-party controller since then, and I don't know why. And I know you could argue the Wii U, but that's kind of a different thing. You could play the entire game on that screen. I'm talking about a secondary screen in your controller that's designed to give you extra stuff. I love that sort of thing, and the original Xbox had the Steel Battalion controller, which is really freaking amazing. There's several fishing rod controllers for various systems. I love that stuff. That's my favorite part of video games, is the weird, unique peripherals that give you that unique experience like you're in an arcade, but you can just do all that cool stuff at home. Number 4, Soul Calibur is the best fighting game series of all time. And that's a controversial one, I know, because a lot of you guys really like Tekken, you like Dead or Alive, you like Super Smash Brothers. I don't know if I would consider that to be an actual fighting game, but there's several fighting games. I mean, there's Street Fighter, for God's sakes. You know, Street Fighter is one of the most iconic and well-respected fighting games, the one that started it all for most of you. And I respect every single one of those to some extent, but for some reason, Soul Calibur to me is just the peak of fighting games. I don't know what it is about that series. I mean, all the characters are very unique, and they have a really nice identity for each one of them. They all have a backstory, and they all use unique weapons. Maxie's got the nunchuck. Siegfried's got the gigantic sword a la Final Fantasy VII Cloud sort of situation. Keelik, who's just got a giant stick and beats the crap out of people with it. There's so many iconic characters. Baldo's a very strange character, to say the least. I just love every single character, and I've grown to become accustomed to playing with each of them just because they're so unique. I love the 8-way run mechanic where you can run all the way around your opponent and get behind them. Because once you start spamming buttons, you know, your character can get into an animation. You could take advantage of that and get behind them and grab them from behind and then stab them in the back. There's so many cool mechanics that Soul Calibur offered us. And to this day, it's my favorite fighting game series of all time. As far as me picking a favorite, I like Soul Calibur 1 on the Dreamcast. That's just a nostalgic thing for me. But if I was going to pick a favorite, it would honestly have to be between Soul Calibur 4 and Soul Calibur 5. A lot of people didn't like Soul Calibur 5 because of what they did with the characters. I love Tekken. I love Dead or Alive. I have a lot of memories with both of those. But for me, Soul Calibur is the best. Number 5, the Neo Geo CD needs more love. I love the Neo Geo CD, man. I don't know what it is about that console. I just think it's cool that it even exists, if we're being real. Because think about the Neo Geo AES and the MVS. That's arcade stuff. And if you're rich, you could buy the AES and have the arcade at home. And if you own an arcade, then you've got an MVS cabinet, and that's how you do your Neo Geo stuff. The Neo Geo CD was for people that couldn't afford the super expensive rich people stuff like the AES with the cartridges and the system itself. And they gave us one of the best controllers ever made, in my opinion, with the Neo Geo CD pad. That controller is still one of my favorites that have ever been produced for a video game console. There's something about that controller that I just love to death. But I think it gets a bad rap, and a lot of people kind of like brushed it aside to history because the loading times were terrible. I myself have had the Neo SD loader mod, so I can load all my games from an SD card, and that vastly improves the loading times. In fact, it pretty much eradicates any of that nastiness that went with the loading times and how people were complaining about that. I think it's just a really nice idea, and it's a really cool system, and I just love the look of it. I love everything about it, actually. I think it's a really cool system, and it's one of those unicorns that took me a long time to convince myself to get, you know, because it's one of the early CD systems, and it had a 1X drive, so there was a lot of problems that could have happened, so I wanted to get that system and then replace the disk drive with something that was a little more reliable and a little more future-proofed. I really do enjoy the Neo Geo CD, and I probably played a little bit more than my Neo Geo AES, if we're being real. Number 6, playing PC games on your couch is peak modern gaming. I've talked about how I don't really like to use the mouse and keyboard for most modern games, just because that's just the kind of guy I am. I've always preferred to be using a controller versus mouse and keyboard, even for like a complex first-person shooter or like an MMO RPG or something like that. I always preferred using the controller. And recently, in the past few months, I had my buddy Chance get up in my attic and run some HDMI cables from my PC to my television, and that's the way that I play pretty much all my Steam games these days. Give or take a few that obviously need to be played with the mouse and keyboard and they don't have controller support or whatever, but man, there's so many great wireless controllers from Nixie and 8-Bit Do and Retro Fighters and all that stuff. There's so many great controllers that you can use wirelessly with that 2.4 gigahertz signal. It's so much more reliable than Bluetooth and essentially almost lag free for the most part. And my situation's really good because I'm not that far away from my PC. So those dongles don't have a lot of interference or anything like that. I just enjoy playing Steam games on the couch, and I think it's awesome. Number 7, I often strive for what I call mini collections instead of going for the whole thing. And you know what I'm talking about. There are people out there that are so deep into video games that they want every single one of them, even the crappy games that they don't like. So for example, there's a lot of people that are trying to get the entire Wii U collection or the entire Sega Genesis collection or PS3 or whatever. It doesn't matter, or the Game Boy. These goals are obtainable for some people, but I'm not rich, so they're definitely out of the scope of reality for me. And that can be kind of a depressing thought that you'll never be able to get all of them. But as long as I can play them, then I'm good. I don't need to have them physically in front of me. I'm not like the dragon that's trying to collect all the gold and hoard it or anything like that. You know what I mean? But I do like going for mini collections, meaning trying to get every single game in a series. I did that with the Streets of Rage collection, and I got all 3 games on the Sega Genesis, as well as Streets of Rage 4. Granted, I don't have the Streets of Rage games that were on the Game Gear, but that's not really important to me. You see what I mean, though? Like, I like to pick and choose as far as what a collection is concerned. And the same thing with Sonic the Hedgehog. I got Sonic 1, 2, and 3, and Sonic and Knuckles. I don't care about the rest of them. I don't care about getting Sonic CD, and I don't care about Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or anything like that. That's never really been a priority for me. But I do find a sense of pride in saying that, I got all the games that I actually wanted in this set. The Pokemon games is another example. I was a big fan of the first 2 generations. I kind of stopped playing around Gen 3, and a lot of people are going to slay me for this, but I honestly just didn't like the double battle mechanic. I didn't like having 2 Pokemon out at the same time battling 2 other Pokemon. It just felt weird to me and cumbersome, and I just wanted to stick to the original formula. But that's an opinion for another video. A lot of people have that mindset where if you want to collect something, you have to get every single thing, and that never interested me. Number 8, I hardly ever play the PlayStation 3 anymore. I'm sorry, there's nothing wrong with it. I like the PlayStation 3, and I've played it a lot when it was relevant, and occasionally I'll go back and mess around with something, but there's just not a lot of titles on that system that are just calling me. I would much rather play the Genesis or the Dreamcast or even like the Wii U or something like that. There's not a lot of exclusive games on that PlayStation 3, and that was kind of like the beginning of the end for a lot of people. I remember when that console first came out, there was just no games. And they were really banking on the fact that, well, you still got your PlayStation 1 and PS2 games, right? You can still play those while we try to hurry and get some of these games out for you. There's still a lot of exclusives that I haven't tried yet on the PlayStation 3. And I don't know, maybe if you're super deep into the PlayStation 3, you can put some of the best games down there in the comments section for me to check out. It'll give me a reason to boot up the console again. But honestly, I use it more as a DVD player than I do as a video game console. Number 9. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is the best game in that series. A lot of you will probably agree with that. A lot of you will probably say Grand Theft Auto 5. I never liked that. I never liked Grand Theft Auto 5. I couldn't get into it. I don't know if it's just because my interests were changing at the time, but I didn't like the fact that you had 3 protagonists to follow around and keep up with their stories. That's something that's really a me thing, I think. When I get overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff, and that's with any video game. If I have a bunch of items to memorize, like this item does this, and you need this many of them to accomplish this goal. And also this person is the person that you talk to do this and this and this and that I just I don't care. I just don't care anymore, you know. And having those three characters was just enough to be slightly overwhelming to me, so I just never really got into it and played it that much. I mean, I played it a little bit, and it's a beautiful game. I mean, obviously Rockstar did a great job with it. We're about to get GTA 6, and we've been introduced to the male and female character. They're obviously together in some capacity. Maybe it's romantic. We're not entirely sure what the whole story is just yet, but I don't know, man. If we're going to be playing as both of those characters, that might be, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that or not. But I loved Grand Theft Auto San Andreas because it introduced a lot of RPG mechanics to the Grand Theft Auto series for the first time. You know, you've got to take over the turf wars and stuff like that, and you've got to work on your fitness, and you could completely change the way that your character looks with the hairstyles and like getting big muscles or being a big fat guy, you know. And I really enjoyed that series a lot, and that's one of my fondest memories of the PlayStation 2 was finally beating that game and then immediately playing it again, just going through and just playing it, not worrying about the story. It's one of the best games I've ever played, for sure. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Number 10, Sega isn't the same Sega anymore, and it's a very difficult pill to swallow. This one sucks. It really does. I'm seeing a lot of things happen with Sega that just is bizarre. And it's not the bizarre that we've known forever and that we've grown to love. Sega used to do some crazy stuff, man. They went totally batshit crazy on a lot of stuff, throwing out all sorts of different iterations of hardware. And it was like a crazy time to be alive. But a lot of us really kind of enjoyed that erratic uncle behavior that Sega has always kind of represented itself as, you know. But now it's almost like, you know, they take all these IPs that are so iconic and have not seen the light of day for a long time, and they take all these systems and peripherals, and it's almost like they just, you know, take a picture of it and pull it out of a suitcase when they come to visit us. Like, isn't this cool? Like, you guys really used to enjoy this, huh? And then they put it back in the suitcase and they never talk about it again. It's crazy to me that they have a gold mine that they're sitting on. Most recently, I made a post on YouTube talking about how Sega is releasing some sort of trading card thing with limited run games where they're just like trading cards that have the pictures of the Dreamcast on it and Jet Grind Radio and Sonic and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, nobody wants this crap. Nobody wants trading cards of these great IPs. We want more games with these great IPs. And what we're not really thinking about is that most of the people that were at Sega that made these games back in the day either don't work there anymore or they're dead. And that's the hard pill to swallow. You can have somebody really iconic and then their son is born, and you see a lot of that original person in the son, but at the end of the day, it's a different person. They might have some characteristics, they might have some similarities and stuff, but it's just not the same company anymore. And I find that interesting because Nintendo seems to be keeping that ball rolling, you know. If you look back to the GameCube days versus what's going on now, they still make great games, albeit they're not exactly the same style of game and then the same vibe and everything. But I don't understand why Sega can't keep that ball rolling. And we've got a lot of Sonic games, and I think that's the problem, is that Sega has become the Sonic people. And they rightfully should be, because Sonic is amazing and it's an iconic series and franchise that a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of and still enjoy. And it's one of those franchises that your little baby boy will like. And it's also one that his son will also probably enjoy several years down the road. I don't understand Sega, and I wish that they would make some changes for the better and give us what the fans want while we're still alive. I'm 33. I'll be 34 later this year. There are several people that are older than me and in their 50s that still have fond memories of Sega. So I think now's the time to strike. We have 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds, and we've even got teenagers now with the new Sonic games that are coming out, such as Sonic Racing Crossworlds, that are fond of Sega. They need to be introduced to some of these really great IPs that we've grown to know and love over the years. And as of right now, we're not seeing anything but Sonic, and it sucks. Number 11, getting older video game consoles back online again is a really fulfilling thing for me. And I know a lot of you are thinking, yeah, that's cool or whatever, but I would never take the time to actually do that myself. I'm exactly the opposite. I will make time to do that, man. Ever since I got my Sega Dreamcast back online and just magically got back into Phantasy Star Online and those servers again, I was like, this is amazing. I have to do this, you know. And admittedly, I haven't gotten a lot of consoles back online. Most recently, I got my Nintendo GameCube back online. So you can play Mario Kart Double Dash as well as, again, Phantasy Star Online. But I just think that's the coolest thing ever, to take some hardware that's been defunct for a long time and then you get right back into it, just like you did back in the day. It's like taking a landline phone and just picking it up and calling somebody again. Most people don't have a landline anymore. It's all cell phones and stuff these days, but that's something that I really do enjoy. Number 12, this kind of goes with number 11, but video games wouldn't be as fun for me if I couldn't tinker with the consoles. And just like I said, getting the Dreamcast and GameCube back online, that's a really fun thing for me. I also love doing the ODE mods and the video mods and stuff like that. Bringing RGB video signals back to these old school retro consoles such as the Super Nintendo. It had RGB out of the box, but it was kind of crappy. But improving that is amazing. There's so many other consoles that will benefit from an RGB mod, such as the N64. I just love tinkering with video game consoles. I love setting them up with EverDrives and ODEs and making them like the ultimate machine. You know what I mean? That's just a me thing. Maybe. I don't know. A lot of you guys like EverDrives and ODEs. Some of you don't. Number 13. I have never been interested in card collecting. Ever. And I've had friends that are into Pokemon cards and Magic the Gathering, and I just never got into it. It's so boring to me, and it's so stupid. It's cardboard. I have a buddy who got into Magic the Gathering, and I love him to death, and he's not a stupid human being. He's just a dude that likes Magic the Gathering. There's nothing wrong with that, but I myself find it to be a useless, stupid hobby. I don't know what it is about Magic the Gathering, but seeing these cards being sold for like $200 for a piece of cardboard is just ridiculous to me. I think it's the stupidest thing in the world that these Pokemon cards are so popular right now, and people are going to Target and all these other retailers and just buying everything in order to scalp it and sell it for a profit. I don't know, man. The cards just never did it for me. Then again, I'm not really a big fan of board games either, so maybe those two are connected somehow. I would much rather play a video game than a board game, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Number 14, the Neo Geo library is awesome, but it's just 10 times more fun if you're playing with friends. That's kind of a given. But I say this because I've spent a lot of time by myself jumping through the Neo Geo library on both the Neo Geo CD and the AES, and there's a lot of great games on there, but there's just a lot more fun when you've got a buddy to hang out with and play these games with, because they are so unique and the art style is so beautiful. Most of these games are fighting games too, so that makes sense. And yeah, you can practice and play against the computer and get your ass kicked for the most part, but I've always had a lot more fun playing these types of games with my friends than I have by myself. Number 15, here's a big one that I'm going to get in trouble for. I think the Dragon Ball Budokai games are infinitely better than the Tenkaichi games. And it's all about the camera angle for me. That's it. Budokai plays like a true fighting game, like a 2D fighting game on a 3D plane situation, and you've got some 3D stuff mixed in where you're flying through the air and you're going to get your opponent or whatever. I've got a lot of history with all three of those Budokai games. I grew up with them, so naturally I have a little more nostalgia than I do for the other games, but I never could get into the Tenkaichi games, and that's why I haven't really gotten into Sparking Zero, the most recent game, is because of the camera angle. You don't have two dudes sitting here and you move like this. You've got a behind the back view, and that was always weird to me. And I know they're doing that to make it look a little bit more like the show and everything, but I never got into it. I much preferred doing the special moves and stuff in Budokai. Tenkaichi just wasn't for me. Sorry. Number 16, Tekken 4 and Tekken 8 are tied for the best Tekken games of all time. I'm very biased with this, obviously, but Tekken 8, if you haven't played it yet, dude, it's an amazing game. It's an amazing fighting game, and it feels so good. That's the wonderful thing about Tekken 8 is that it feels right. It's such a good feeling with that game. And I know I'm being weird by using the word feeling, but if you've played a game like this, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every input that you do feels exactly the way it should. Every kick that you throw, every time that you grab somebody, it feels just right. And I love that about that game. The sound effects in that game, the sound of hitting somebody in the face is just so realistic, and it's just so good. Now, Tekken 4, on the other hand, obviously many years ago on the PlayStation 2, I love the soundtrack of that game. I love the way that it looked because it was such a huge jump from Tekken 3 to Tekken 4 graphically. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous, especially in component video on a CRT. I've played them all. I've played all the Tekken games. It's really hard to go back to Tekken 1. Even Tekken 3. I know a lot of people love Tekken 3, and it's one of the most iconic fighting games ever. I will agree with that, but I would much rather play Tekken 4 or Tekken 8 than Tekken 3. Number 17, if a game is free to play, I'm probably not going to play it. And I know that's crazy because that's like, here, dude, here's a free game. Just play it. No. Yeah, you can play a free-to-play game and never have to spend any money, but there's always that incentive. There's always that dude that's hanging around the corner like, hey, are you still enjoying this free game that we gave you? Do you want to spend some real money? I mean, you haven't paid anything. Usually you'd have to pay $20 to play this game. Why don't you buy some of this stuff, some cosmetic stuff, or you can get this battle pass stuff. I never like that. And it's usually based around skins. They will make you jealous of other people that have paid for the battle pass or whatever, and it's like, this is a really badass looking skin. You know, Marvel Rivals, Fragpunk, all sorts of games like that will try to incentivize you to actually spend money despite the fact that you're just trying to play a game for free. So usually I just wash my hands of it and I don't play those games. I would much rather say that, yeah, I paid for this game and I want to play it because I paid for it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing. Number 18, the Virtual Boy is the worst video game console. I'm just going to say that right now. I've played a lot of crappy consoles over the years. Virtual Boy is by far the worst experience just because it's incredibly uncomfortable to even play it. You have to get down and look into it like this, and it's on a stand. It's not even a headset like you would think it should have been. I've owned one before, and I could not sell that thing fast enough, and I'm super glad that I did. I got it out of my game room because I just will never use it. You know, it's a terrible console. It puts strain on your eyes, and it's just a bad console all around. It had some decent games, but for the most part, they weren't worth playing. But that being said, if I do want to play the Virtual Boy these days, I'm not going to go and get the new add-on from Nintendo. I'm going to use my 3DS and use an emulator to play some of those games with the 3D screen. That's a much better way to play those games than it is looking into that god-awful box and trying to make your eyes work. It's just, no. I don't like the Virtual Boy. Sorry. Number 19, we could really use some really cool video game crossovers like we used to do back in the day. If you remember Battletoads and Double Dragon, that's one of my favorite Sega Genesis games. Double Dragon was really fun, and some of the games are better than others. Some of them are more, playable than others. Some of those games are really difficult to play. The controllers are just weird. Battletoads has always been a difficult game, but to have those two characters join up together is pretty freaking cool, and I feel like we're not getting a lot of that these days, or maybe we are, and I'm just kind of under the radar on that stuff. If you know of any really cool crossovers that we're getting, put those in the comments section below, because I'd like to check them out. But another good example is Tekken versus Street Fighter. We haven't had a decent Tekken versus Street Fighter crossover type thing in quite some time, and I really did enjoy that on the PlayStation 3 back in the day. Number 20, Pokopia is a lot better than Animal Crossing. And I know this isn't a really retro thing. This is obviously the Nintendo Switch that we're talking about here, but I really have been getting sucked into those types of games lately, and I've always really liked those grindy games. That's exactly what this is. They put you out there in a sort of open world. It's not entirely huge, you have to progress before you can move pretty much anywhere in the game, but I do like that they let you have complete control. And I guess Animal Crossing is the same way, but I just like the Pokopia game better because I have more nostalgia for the Pokemon stuff. And Animal Crossing is great. I'm not knocking it or anything, but if I had to choose between either one of those, I would highly recommend Pokopia instead, just because I feel like you've got a lot more stuff that you can do by learning all these different moves that these Pokemon are so iconic for having, and it's just a much better time in my opinion. Number 21, I will play a crappy game as long as it has some really great music. And I was trying to think of some examples, but there's no reason to name off multiple examples when I could just give the ultimate example, and that of course is Sonic R on the Sega Saturn. It's a terrible racing game, very difficult to control. It doesn't even look that great, but it's got a really, really badass soundtrack. It's just so nostalgic, cozy soundtrack with this beautiful singer, and it's just singing about, happy things. Can you feel the sunshine? That's one of my favorite soundtracks of a crappy game. But let me know in the comment section below which is your favorite soundtrack from a very crappy game. Number 22, I will wait an uncomfortable amount of time to buy a AAA game at a discount. I've wanted to play Doom the Dark Ages for quite some time. I've wanted to play Pragmata. That's just a couple of examples, but I'm not going to buy that stuff until it goes on sale. I picked up Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 just because my buddies are really wanting me to play it with them. I did not want to pay full price for that game. It's a great game, and I really do like it now that I've played it, but I got it for like less than $20. That's what I'm talking about. There are only certain games that I will actually go all out and pay $60 or $70 for full price, and those games are very few and far between. I'm a let's wait for it to go on sale kind of guy. Number 23, I only really use the Wii for emulation. And ever since then, I haven't really touched it much. I never really pull out the Wii motes just to play a Wii game. And a lot of you have a lot of nostalgia for the Wii, and I guess I kind of do too, because I have fond memories of my family and I getting together and playing the Wii bowling and Wii tennis and stuff on Wii Sports, but that's about it. I cannot name one game on the Wii that's a Wii exclusive that I just really have to play, you know. Kirby's Epic Yarn has great music, and I enjoyed that game, but other than that, I mean, I learned how to jailbreak that Wii, which is one of the easiest things to do, and that's where I first checked out some of the really obscure consoles like the TurboGrafx 16. You know, back in the day when I was building my console collection, I had the real Sega Genesis with a primitive EverDrive, you know, one of the first ones that came out. But I would use the Wii to play the TurboGrafx stuff just because I couldn't afford one. But now that I've gotten older and I've spent more money, I've actually got a PC Engine core graphics with the Super HD System 3, so that's how I play all my TurboGrafx stuff these days. But the Wii, it's never been my favorite console. Number 24, it's going to tie into number 23 to some extent, but hacking or jailbreaking a console is an exhilarating experience, and I think everybody that's into video games should try it at least once. Yes, there's the legal thing. We don't want to do anything illegal, but what you do for your own personal enjoyment, you know, it's your business for the most part, and as long as you're not doing anything illegal, if you can jailbreak a console, it's a really cool thing. For me, it's like when the console came out, you get it for Christmas or whatever, and there's your Christmas present, and then you play the games and you do all that stuff, but then later on, it's like you notice that there's an invisible door that you never noticed before, and you open up that console, and it's like you've got another experience inside that's been there the whole time. It's like that's the type of exhilaration that I'm talking about with this. You know, jailbreaking the Wii is really cool. The PlayStation 3, putting custom firmware on whatever console or handheld that you want. It's a really, really cool experience. And it's really a lot of fun, to be honest. Number 25, I could play the original Pokemon games on repeat for the rest of my life and be pretty happy about it. There's something about those RPGs. They've created such a wonderful system where you could play the game over and over and over again and have different results every time based on which Pokemon that you have in your party. And with hacks and stuff and Game Shark cheats or whatever, you could have your starter Pokemon be whatever the hell you want it to be. So there's infinite playability. I never get tired of the story. I never get tired of going to the same towns in the same order. There's something special about those games, and it's not just because I'm a Pokemon fan, I guess. I don't really consider myself to be like a hardcore Pokemon fan, though. I don't collect the plushes. I don't really watch the TV show. I don't collect the cards, obviously. I don't really do anything except play the original games, and of course Pokopia, because that's just such a throwback to the original generation, you know. And spoiler alert, you're playing as a Ditto that's trying to pick up the pieces and try to solve the mystery of where have all the humans gone. And you're in these towns that are just barren and there's just dust and dirt everywhere, and it's up to you to try to make it lively again and invite more Pokemon to come and live there with you. And a lot of these towns are based on, you know, the old school Generation 1 towns, and most of them are even straight up telling you that, yeah, this is Vermilion City. So that kind of thing is really nostalgic, and obviously that's why I'm enjoying it so much. Number 26, I have an addiction to grindy games, and I wouldn't have it any other way. A lot of people don't like that sort of gameplay where you play through a game and you just have to keep playing it, and then you spend hours and hours and hours before you know it. That sort of thing isn't appealing to most people, but for guys like me, it most certainly is. I cannot get enough of playing Phantasy Star Online and Pokopia. Once again, Space Marine 2, that's a grindy game for sure. You have to do a lot of the same tasks over and over again, but the gameplay is so unique and interesting that it's never boring. You know what I mean? It's never the exact same thing every single time. For the most part, you can play through it, and you're doing the same thing. On Space Marine, you're killing the enemy bugs or creatures or whatever, but when you play with friends, it's actually a lot of fun. I'm a grindy game guy. I always have been, and I probably always will be. Number 27. Elden Ring wasn't for me, but I really enjoy Dark Souls, the first one. The Dark Souls is the type of game that is just rage-inducing for a lot of people, and the common thing with the Elden Ring and the Dark Souls games is that you just have to get good. You have to get very good at knowing what to do, when to roll, and when to move, and when to use your magic stuff. It's a very, very interesting game. It's a lot of fun. Elden Ring was just a little overwhelming for me, and I just didn't have that much interest in it to have an open world game in that style. Just something about the original Dark Souls. Maybe it's because I haven't put enough time into it, and I feel like I need to complete the original Dark Souls before I jump into something bigger like Elden Ring. A lot of my friends really love Elden Ring, and a lot of people have a lot of respect and love for that game series. It's not for me. Or maybe it's not for me yet. I don't know. Number 28. I'm going to be calling a lot of you people out for this one, and I apologize. It's not a personal attack, so if you feel some type of way about it, just know that I'm not coming after you, but a lot of you are going to have some feelings about this one. I usually avoid Steam entirely because they've developed a system in which they want to have you buy a bunch of games that you never will play, and then you have a backlog of games that you got for admittedly a really good deal. I won't dispute that. Steam is the best way to buy games at a great price. I've never been attracted to that. Oh, I want to buy a game just because it's cheap. I'm really trying to curate my collection and games that I actually enjoy and want to play these days. And I'm trying to steer away from Steam because they're really good at getting you to spend money on great games and stuff that you will only play either once or never. Think about your Steam library right now. How many games do you have in there that you've never even touched? That's a waste of space. I hope they're not installed on your computer if you're not planning on playing them, because that's a gigantic waste of space. I'm super meticulous about my space on my computer because I do videos like this. The camera that I'm using right now, it's going to take me an hour to upload this footage onto my computer just because it's so intensive. The files are huge. File size are really huge for these video clips. I don't have anything installed on my Steam library unless it's something that I play regularly. Don't mean to call you guys out or anything, but I'm not that guy anymore. I don't buy Steam games just because they're cheap. I want to make sure that it's a game that I'm going to be super interested in, so that way I don't have a giant backlog of stuff that's just going to sit there and, quite frankly, never get played. Number 29, a lot of you are going to hate me for this one, but I'd be okay with never playing a new Sonic game for the rest of my life. I enjoyed Sonic 1, 2, and 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. That's why I owned them, and am very proud to own them because it's a piece of my childhood that I now have physically, just like I used to back in the day. But I played Sonic Frontiers. Really wasn't for me. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is pretty fun, but to be honest, I think Mario Kart World is a little better as far as the gameplay is concerned. And it goes back to the other thing I was talking about earlier about Sega not being the same. They've got to try to figure something out with Sonic, man, because Sonic Superstars, I think, was a 3D/2D type game, and it was just okay. A lot of these Sonic games are coming out, and they're just okay. We haven't seen a really, truly great Sonic game since Sonic Mania, and I think Sonic is in danger. I don't know. People will keep buying Sonic just like they'll keep buying Mario stuff, but I think I'm ready to move away from Sonic. It's not for me anymore. Even Sonic Mania, it's fun or whatever, but I don't feel like I need to play those games anymore. There's so many other games that I would rather divert my attention to. Not to say that I hate it or it's bad or anything. It's just I think I'm outgrowing it a little bit, and that's okay. And number 30, Nintendo has become exceptionally adept at brainwashing their customer base. And I myself am guilty of being brainwashed by Nintendo. Their characters have become so iconic and so valuable that they've convinced everyone that they're worth $70 or $80 a game, which is just insanity. Because most of their games are fun and they're great. Some of them are amazing, but not all of them. Not all of them are worth that $70 price tag. And it's a subjective thing. It depends on how you feel about it, of course, depending on what you want to spend your money on, of course. But I think that they've done a very brilliant strategy over the years. They've convinced us that these characters are worth that much money when in reality they're not all the time. Not all the time. Sometimes they are, but not all the time. And they've sold us mediocre products for such a long time as far as the hardware is concerned. The Wii U was pretty awesome. But when the Switch came around, they convinced us that being able to take this console on the go in handheld mode and dock it on your television was more valuable than a decent control system. The Joy-Cons are a terrible excuse for a controller, and they break down and they have issues all the time. Even in handheld mode, it's an incredibly uncomfortable experience. And there's so many third-party companies out there that are selling you enhancement devices to make your Switch more comfortable. You've seen what I'm talking about, right? Like the grips. There's so many different grips that you can buy to attach to your console, and sometimes it's a pain in the ass to put it on the dock because the grips get in the way. But I see all these people in these Nintendo groups, and they are just so ecstatic that these grips exist. They're like, oh man, this is so much better. This is so awesome. I love these grips. These are the best things ever for the Nintendo Switch. And I just keep thinking to myself, wouldn't it be awesome if like the Switch had this stuff to begin with, like the comfortable stuff? Wouldn't it be awesome if you didn't have to buy third-party crap to make your first-party console comfortable? I don't know, maybe that's just me. Again, I'm kind of dogging on Nintendo, and I get in trouble for this, but it's an observation. You know what? This is the kind of stuff that I think about, and this is why I want to make this video, because I want to share these real thoughts that I have, you know? I think it's strange that Nintendo has become this entity of, we have the best characters ever, and you're going to pay whatever we say you are for it. And people are just like, okay, I'll complain a little bit, but eventually I'll pay for it. And I'm the same way, man. I complained so hard about the game keycard stuff, and I complained about the Nintendo Switch 2. And now I own the Switch 2, and I own a game keycard game, Pokopia. I've talked about that a lot in this video. It's not that I feel as though I'm bowing down to Nintendo as my master or anything. I can still complain about this stuff, and rightfully so. But what crossed that line for me to spend the money and jump into the console was because I wanted to have a great time with my girlfriend and my friends too. I love Mario Tennis. I love playing Mario Tennis. Mario Tennis is one of my favorite tennis games of all time, so naturally, when it was announced as a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, I had to get it. Pokopia, again, it's a really cozy game. Tamagotchi Life, the Donkey Kong game, Mario Kart World. These are all experiences, and I think that's what Nintendo is best at, is selling you great experiences to have with your friends and family. And so far, I'm having a really great time with my friends and my girlfriend, Emily. We're having a blast together, and we're making beautiful memories together. But I think, on the whole, Nintendo is really good at convincing you that their characters are worth a lot of money. And obviously, they are worth money. I just think they're really good at convincing people to spend money. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm not trying to say that Nintendo characters are worthless or anything, or that the Switch is a piece of crap, because it's not. It's a great console, but I think they cut a lot of corners sometimes, and I think that's self-evident with the Joy-Cons. Well, those are 30 more unpopular opinions. I think this is probably going to be the last video. I might put it all together in a giant compilation if you guys are interested in that sort of thing. But I really appreciate you guys and your interest in what I have to say about video games. It was kind of surprising to see so many people be on board with hearing what I have to say about video games. I honestly didn't expect it, and I really appreciate the interest. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, as well as the other videos in this series. I've got playlists and stuff in the description below if you want to check out some more videos while you're here. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys at the very next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.